This is your January 2026 astrology forecast swoosh, and in this video I will not only cover what to expect for the month based on your rising sign, but I will also go over your forecast based on all of your personal natal planets, just so you get a more personalized and individualized read on what you can expect through the month. But not only that, all of the forecasts will cover applicable tips and tricks to help you get through the month and to make the most of this energy, because remember, astrology doesn't basically tell us what will happen, but it will tell us what the energetic landscape will look like so that we can determine how we can ride the wave to the best of our ability and make the most out of this energy for our lives. But before we get into the personalized forecast, let's go over what to expect this month. And so January 2026 starts with a heavy tangible focus on Capricorn, with a lot of planets in Capricorn. Laying foundations, tapping into grit, and building things that last will be central for all of us. But the script is going to flip halfway through, because we move from the rules of the game energy of Capricorn into the boundary pushing, system shaking world of Aquarius. And we will spend the first half of the month proving we can handle the weight of our lives and building the structures to do so, while we spend the second half realizing that those old systems that may not work anymore definitely need an upgrade if we want to make quantum leaps in our lives. And so while I know the first half of January will demand work, and I know we all moan and groan at the idea of work, it really is the opportunity to create the most solid structure possible, because we will need that structure as we progress later into the month into the Aquarius stellium, and also as we go deeper into 2026, particularly with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries coming up very, very soon, alongside some other intense configurations that could create a massive pressure makes diamonds moment in our lives, but also within society. And the best part of this month is that whatever we build this month can really carry us so far in our lives. And I love that we now have the free will to kind of build the structures that we need to get us through whatever life throws at us. And so now that we have that out of the way, first I will be going into sort of the big overview of all of the transits happening in January, just so that you know what to expect on a broader level. But then I will go into the personalized forecasts, where you can go down to the timestamp below, watch your timestamps, and then you can kind of understand and anticipate what will happen for you this month. And I will also provide the tips and tricks to help get you through the month, at least with a little bit of sanity left within your mind and your body and your soul. And so now that we have that out of the way, let's get into the broader forecasts, and then we'll get into the individual forecasts, and let's do this in 3, 2, 1, go. Starting out the month on January 1st, we will be having Mercury entering the sign of Capricorn. And so if Mercury is our mental patterns, we will be seeing our mental patterns shift from the scattered optimism of Sagittarius, it's very big pictured, into a more stoic and results-oriented framework. And so the mind will demand discipline and focus, and this will be focused on the mechanics of how rather than what if. This is where we really start to get the ideas together to build our life, to build the structures in our life, or to make the changes that we need to see in our life. And so we will probably on a personal level feel a sudden shift from the holiday mode to the project manager mode, and the implication is a need for mental order. So maybe, for example, on New Year's Day, you find that you're not making a vision board that's based off of ideals, or that seems very out of reach, but maybe you make a plan, maybe you make a strict budget, a strict to-do list, or a detailed step-by-step plan to make the changes that you want to in your life, and you take your goals a lot more seriously than you normally would. But on a society level, maybe the collective will just move back to business as usual with a sharper eye on logistics. I know a lot of companies, for example, are restarting business on the 1st, but also this is the time where you kind of set like the new goals. And so I think we'll see a lot more seriousness from the collective in general. And another example on how this can play out is maybe news cycles, for example, could shift abruptly from the holiday festivities to the grim reality. Maybe it talks about the financial reports or discussions on infrastructure and long-term viability. I think discussions will become a lot more realistic, if that makes sense. And so on the positive side, there could be incredible mental clarity and an ability to organize complex thoughts into actionable steps. But the negative side of this is that there could be a tunnel vision or pessimism in the air, especially with, the mental framework of yourself and society. And maybe people or yourself could start shooting down good ideas because the logistics seem too difficult. And then moving on to the second, we will be having Chiron Chiron going direct in the sign of Aries. And so this is the wound of starting. If Aries is about starting and taking initiative and Chiron is the wounded healer, a lot of us have had a lot of, trouble starting things in the last few years as Chiron has been in Aries. But because it's going direct, we will begin to heal through action, or action will be the thing that heals us rather than the contemplative energy of the retrograde. And so this is raw instinctual heat that drives us to assert our own right to exist and lead despite past failures. And so you may feel more likely to go after something, even if it seems a little bit more far-fetched, because this is where you can begin to heal your confidence. And so on a personal level, maybe the internal questioning stops and the urge to act will take over, and you heal by doing, not by thinking. And so maybe you finally post that piece of content that you've been terrified to share, or maybe you stand up to a dominant personality in your life without planning the script beforehand. Maybe it's just pure instinct. But on a society level, maybe there's a push for individual rights and independence. So for example, maybe we see a surge in advocacy groups or marginalized voices speaking up with a new, sharper intensity, really demanding to be seen and not wanting to hide anymore. And so on the positive side, this is a time for a breakthrough in confidence where you stop letting old wounds dictate your movement. But on the negative side, the energy can be abrasive. And so speaking your truth can come out as aggression or picking a fight just to prove that you can. And so when you do fight your fight, you need to stand tall with it in order to yield the best results. And then moving on to January 3rd, we have the full moon in Cancer. And so this full moon will illuminate our inner emotional landscape and our fundamental sense of safety. And this is going to be contrasting the cold external climb of the Capricorn planets that are happening at this time. And so on a personal level, maybe you are forced to check if your external success will match your internal needs. This is a time where maybe you've been working so hard on something and you've been just trying to do the work, whether it's internal or external, that maybe you've been neglecting yourself. And so for example, maybe you break down in tears after a long work week and realize that you need to cancel all plans just to rot in bed or cook a meal just to feel grounded at home, or you realize that you finally want to do something for yourself, and this is a really good time for self-care. But from a societal standpoint, maybe there is more of a spotlight on housing or families or, human rights, like the things that come from the emotional core, or maybe even the concept of protection. And so just for example, maybe there's public discourse, which could pivot to maybe the housing market or childcare, or what the state owes the family unit in order to keep it safe, or what it owes us, if that makes sense. Because every time we see major Cancer transits, we do see those themes coming up in the media. And so on a more positive side, maybe there's this deep, nurturing release that really resets your emotional baseline. Remember, the moon likes being in Cancer, so this is such a healthy time to really address your emotions, to bring them out, and then to act on them. But the negative side is there could be a little bit of moodiness, not only with yourself, but with the collective, or there could be a clinging to the past or safety out of the fear for the future. And then going on from January 6th to the 9th, I wanted to talk about this kind of as a bundle because there is going to be a conjunction with the Sun, Venus, and Mars in the sign of Capricorn. And this is a rare builder energy. And so maybe identity, values, and drive are fused in a way that really, increases your productivity or your sense of duty. And so if there's something that you want to build, or if there's a task that you got to do that is going to take a lot of energy, this is the time to do it, because this will be the time where you probably most likely feel driven to do it. And so on a personal level, you could become a machine of manifestation, and emotional nuance will be replaced by the satisfaction of tangible progress. And what you could build during this conjunction could really carry you for the rest of the year, because we have some major transits coming up that all require this steady foundation, because we're going to see a conjunction of planets in Aries in a couple of months, and the conjunction of planets in Capricorn now are kind of needed for that baseline to make sure that when we do take action in a few months, that we have a solid leg to stand on. And so just as an example, maybe you spend 12 hours working on a passion project without feeling tired because you are just fueled by the results, or you make a formal commitment like signing a lease with a very serious tone. This is a time to set something in stone, whether it's your intention or it could be actually focused on reality. It could be a contract of some sorts. On a society level, there could be a heavy focus on industry, maybe tradition, and reinforcing, the bones or the structure of the things that rule society. We could see a very heavy focus on that. And so, for example, maybe there are governments or corporations that are launching massive projects at this time, or maybe there are people, for better or worse, that are enforcing some strict new protocols for efficiency. Maybe the whole goal is efficiency and structure, but whether we agree with that structure or not, that is probably going to be subjective. And so on a positive side, there is an incredible sense of integrity and an ability to build things that actually last a lifetime. And so use this energy to your advantage. If you feel like you are stuck, maybe the thing that you are building is the way to become unstuck, if that makes sense. It doesn't matter where you are in life. There is something that you can build, and you only have to take one step at a time to start to see results. But the negative side of that is that it could be a very all work and no play atmosphere. And so there could be a risk of treating people like assets rather than humans, or there could be a risk of, even dehumanizing yourself, which could be very tough and could lead to burnout. And then from the 9th to the 10th, we have the Sun, Venus, and Mars in Capricorn making an opposition to Jupiter in Cancer. And this is where it goes exact, although we will feel it, a few days before and after. And so the energy of this point is that there is a tension point between the drive for status, or the drive to, achieve something or to build something, or we could feel like we've had to put our nose down and do the dirty work for a while. But there is like this need for emotional meaning behind it. And so if that has gotten lost because of this opposition, we may either have external things that happen or internal things that happen that kind of, bring that realization up within us that, hey, I need to remember why I want to do this. I want to do this because I want to be like safe and secure and happy, and I want to follow my passions. Like, don't forget the mission. And if you do forget the mission, this will be the time where it will remind you of that, which could be a good reality check. And so on a personal level, you could feel a tug of war between your ambition and your internal self. And so maybe you feel immense guilt, for example, about, your work that really takes away from a family event. Or maybe you realize that a promotion that you want to get isn't worth it if you're too tired to enjoy your home. Or maybe, for example, you're so caught up in your own, personal healing. You're trying to build a structure within your internal self that you realize that you're not allowing yourself to feel the emotions because you think that shutting them out makes you feel a little bit stronger. But on a societal level, there could be a tension between, for example, corporate growth, or, the structures that really hold together society, and the well-being of the collective or the people. And so just as one example, maybe there are debates regarding return to office mandates, for example, that, it doesn't really consider the people, because I think a lot of people want to work from home, but it kind of involves the companies, trying to reinforce this structure. Or maybe, for example, there are structures within, government structures, for example, that don't seem like they are considering the people. And we could see, a debate regarding human rights versus, the structures that, in quotations, will keep society together. It's very vague. Take what resonates. We will see these themes come up. I just don't know how. And so the positive side of this is that Jupiter gives your ambition a why, and you work so hard so that you can protect what you love. And it is a beautiful thing to realize that you can have both success or hard work, but you can also have that emotional fulfillment as well. But the negative side of this transit is that there could be overextension, maybe trying to be the CEO and the perfect parent simultaneously, and burning yourself out. Or maybe you're trying to be, this structured person who has your life together, but you're like falling apart and you don't, pick up the pieces because you think you should be stronger than that. Let both exist at the same time. That's the only advice I have for that. And then going from the 11th to the 13th, we will have the Sun, Venus, and Mars in Capricorn squaring Chiron in Aries. There's a lot going on with these Capricorn planets. I know this, but this month tells a very, specific story because of that, which is really great as an astrologer because it makes the story a little bit more straightforward. And so this is kind of like a test of grit. And so the responsible structures of Capricorn will clash with the wounded courage of Aries. It's like maybe you want to start something, but then you realize how much work that you actually have to do to make it happen, and you have to be consistent with it. And this could, bring up a little bit of insecurity. And so on a personal level, you could face a situation, for example, that triggers imposter syndrome, but demands that you lead anyway. And so remember, if Aries is about the self and how you assert yourself, and Capricorn is about your hard work, maybe there's like a part of yourself who feels like you're not capable. And so a good example is maybe, for example, you're promoted to a position, but you don't feel qualified for having this, and you have to feel like you fake it till you make it. And this this can make you feel very insecure, or maybe you have to defend your boundaries against a rigid authority figure because Chiron could be the one wounding you in some way. And so I would just watch out for any situations that really make you feel secure about your right to lead or your right to take action or your right to succeed around the 11th to the 13th, because this is likely related to that Chiron square. And from a societal standpoint, the struggle could take place between established authorities and maybe a younger, more instinctual push for change. And so maybe, there are a lot of people who feel especially tired or wounded by these structures that have been established and in place for a very long time, or they feel like it is not fair on how hard they have to work to push past these structures. And so, for example, maybe there are protests or pushback against established laws that feel too restrictive for the individual freedom. And so on the positive side, there could be healthy discipline here. Maybe you learn to work through the fear rather than avoiding it. That is obviously the ideal way that this can happen. And obviously this will be dependent on your rising sign on how you can work through this fear. But a negative side of this transit is you could be leaving with a bruised ego. It could be very hard, or maybe you feel restricted or silenced by the powers that be. And in my honest opinion, this is kind of building up to Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries, where we kind of realize what our individual power actually is. But in order for us to realize what it is, we kind of have to feel that wound first. And so I would kind of take this as a prelude. I don't know if I'm using the right word there, prelude. I'm just going to go with that, like a predecessor. I think that's the word, to what is coming in the next few months. And then moving on to the 14th, we have Mercury in Capricorn making the opposition to Jupiter in Cancer. And so this practical, logical energy of Mercury will be opposing with this big picture wisdom of Jupiter. And so this is kind of like the fine print versus the big picture dream, if that makes sense. And so maybe a personal example of that is maybe your brain is saying something that hey, this is too expensive, it's too risky, but your gut says it's worth it. And so that issue that I talked about with the Chiron planet squaring Aries before this transit, it's now going to turn more to a mental level. Maybe you start to mentally ponder it. And so, for example, maybe you find yourself arguing over the specific logistical plans of, whatever is happening in your life or with another person, while, somebody else in your life or maybe another part of yourself is focused on the emotional vision. And so it's kind of like the balance or the head versus heart dilemma, if that makes sense. But then going on to the societal implications, maybe a lot of the debates or the news could be a little bit more mental, or maybe you could feel like, everything that you see on the media at this time is exaggerated, or maybe you see more of this conflict between these people who are trying to nitpick the little details and the people who have a bigger vision. You could see debates between data analysts and moral leaders, for example. And so this could play out, for example, as maybe a policy is proposed that sounds good emotionally, but gets torn apart by the experts because the math doesn't check out, or vice versa. Maybe someone presents, a policy where the math does check out, but it is not good emotionally or ethically, and we could see a divide because of that. And so the positive of this is you could find a middle ground where your big dreams could get, backed up by that realistic plan. That's the best way oppositions can play out, is through balance. Remember that anytime that you see an opposition in your birth chart or in your life, balance is key. But a negative side of this is there could be a little bit of mental inflation. Maybe you are promising more than you can deliver because you feel optimistic, or maybe other people are promising more. And so before you put something down in stone, or before you, hold yourself accountable for something, try to make sure it's realistic before doing that. And then going on to Mercury and Capricorn squaring Chiron and Aries, this does continue this square to Chiron and Aries saga, where those issues about your self-esteem or your competence or your imposter syndrome will become a little bit more mental. Maybe you hear communication that triggers that wound, or maybe you're working through those wounds on a very mental level. And at this time, we could be healing the wound of not knowing anything or not knowing something, but also feeling silenced. Maybe we don't feel heard because Mercury is about communication. And part of Mercury that is intense aspect is that it can feel silenced, but it can also feel a little bit scattered as well. And so on a personal level, maybe you feel overly critical of your own ideas, or you fear speaking up. And so, for example, maybe you're writing an email 10 times before you send it out because you are terrified of a typo or sounding weak. Or maybe you have a difficult conversation where you finally admit that you don't have the answer. But on a societal level, we could see more criticism of leadership at this time, or more whistleblowing, if that makes sense. So, for example, example, maybe the public starts questioning leaders' competence or decision-making processes more than usual. It's not like they're not doing that already, because they kind of are, but this could really peak maybe because of things that happened earlier in the month. And so on the positive side, this transit can force you to speak with precision and courage, really proving your capability. And even if you don't want to speak up, it is so important to at least speak the truth to yourself. Maybe journal it, speak to yourself, write it down, do what you got to do so that you can prove your capability and you can start gaining confidence in your voice again. But the negative side of this is defensive communication or self-sabotaging or being quiet, to avoid being wrong. And so don't be quiet just because you're scared of being wrong. You are allowed to mess up because you are human. So this is an important thing to remember at this time. And then going to the 17th, we have Venus entering Aquarius. And so values, beauty, aesthetics will kind of shift from that traditional hierarchical, hard work perspective to a more innovative or collaborative energy. And love or passion could look like friendship or freedom, and things could become a little bit more rebellious at this time. And so some personal implications, maybe for example, you crave more space or intellectual connection over sticky romance, or maybe you crave more freedom and you want to go a little bit more offbeat when it comes to how you express your passions. And so, for example, maybe you take a break from your passion projects or a relationship to recharge your identity, or maybe you just find yourself more attracted to people's mind or the politics rather than their status, or maybe when it comes to, how you value music or how you value art, maybe you listen to something a little bit more different than what you're used to listening to. On a society level, though, maybe people start valuing community goals over individual status, and maybe things turn a little bit more offbeat. And so just an example of that, maybe a shift in trends towards being more cool or being defined by inclusivity and uniqueness could take place rather than something that's more luxurious or exclusive. And maybe this is, more seen in your social media feeds, and because that's how it can play out, because it is the aesthetic things that we can see in our lives. And so on the positive side, we could see a refreshing detachment that allows for free, intellectually stimulating love or passion within our life. But a negative side of this transit is it could be a little bit aloof, or it could feel disconnected from the warm side of intimacy. And I know Capricorn was a little bit cold too, but with Aquarius being a little bit more sporadic, it could make some people feel a little bit less grounded in their passions or their values or their romance if they don't learn how to embrace that freedom and fly like a bird, and instead they go in a cage because they see all the other birds flying around and they feel crazy and they're like, get away from me. And yeah, it can be overwhelming. So it is a double-edged sword, just like anything else. And then going on to the 17th and the 18th, we have Mercury in Capricorn being conjunct with Mars in Capricorn. And so the master strategist energy will be sparked, and your mind and drive will be in perfect unison at this time. You will be sharp, productive, and efficient. This is another time to get things done, especially as we enter Aquarius season, where things are going to, change a little bit fast. And so this is a really good time to finalize our structures to make sure that they can hold the weight. And so on a personal level, maybe you have the ability to clear a month's worth of work in one day. And so an example is maybe there's a negotiation where you are so sharp and you get exactly what you want, or maybe you have a sudden burst where you want to clean your house and organize your to-do list and do all of your work and do it precisely. And this can be such a great time to, clear your to-do list. But on a societal level, there could be swift executive actions, if that makes sense. So maybe a leader or a company, for example, make a sudden firm decision that cuts through red tape immediately, and it could take people by surprise. But unless you watch this forecast, maybe it won't take you by surprise now. And so on the positive side, it gives you unparalleled focus and mental stamina. But on the negative side, there could be aggressive or robotic communications at this time. Maybe people are a little bit more snappy for being a little bit inefficient. And so we have to remember to give ourselves grace at this time. And then on the 18th, we have the new moon in Capricorn. And this is kind of the culmination of the end of this Capricorn stellium, if you ask me. And so this is the ultimate reset for goals, legacy, public image, maybe the way that we work towards things, the way that we build discipline and structure in our life, because it is ruled by Saturn. And this is a time for planting seeds for security and status that actually gives results. And so on a personal level, this is a time to really commit to the long game. Maybe you see things finally starting to culminate from the work you did earlier in the month, or maybe you realize this new way that you want to do things and you get a second wind. And so, for example, maybe you start a new business venture. Maybe you commit to a serious discipline like a fitness routine or a savings plan, and you find, or if you've already done this earlier in the month, you start to see the results of that. But also on a societal level, there could be a launch of new structures. Maybe there's new corporate initiatives or government programs that are announced that are intended to be permanent fixtures, for better or worse. It doesn't mean that these fixtures are good, but we could see a lot of programs announced at this time that kind of are designed to structure society in some way. And so on the positive end, it's a clean slate to structure your life. But on the negative side, things could feel a little bit heavy or burdensome. It could be all duty and no joy. And so this is something to watch out for. And then on the 19th, we have the sun entering Aquarius. So the vitality will shift to the future. It will shift to more innovation. Things will feel a little bit more lighter, but a little bit more sporadic. And identity at this time will be found in uniqueness and contribution to the collective. It'll be how you can contribute. It'll be what you can offer that is purely yours, and your ability to walk to the beat of your own drum that will really make you shine during the season. So on a personal level, maybe you feel a surge of energy to rebel against the rules that you just followed for the sake of following them and they don't actually mean something. So for example, maybe you drastically change your appearance to do something unconventional, or you join a community that is centered around a niche interest. On a society level though, maybe the focus will shift to technology and social reform, for example. And so for example, maybe the news cycle pivots from like the economy and more about the money side of things to more futuristic or technology driven things or society. Maybe there's a new development in AI around this time, although Aquarius season lasts a while, and we will see an Aquarius stellium that could peak this energy, but this will kind of be the start of it. And so on the positive side, there is a lot of liberation and visionary thinking that can happen at this time. But on the negative side, you could feel like an outsider or become cold or unpredictable depending on what happens. And then on the 19th, we have Venus conjoining Pluto in Aquarius. And this is kind of evolution through desire. So maybe relationships and values undergo a radical transformation via the collective systems. So on a personal level, this can look like relationships facing a stress test or a deepening. For example, maybe a fated meeting that shifts your social circle entirely could take place. Or maybe you find out a secret that changes how you view a friend group. Or maybe you personally just have a new way that you want to approach relationships or approach your friend groups or to approach, your passion projects. And this could be triggered by a sudden event that happens internally or externally. And then on a societal level, maybe power dynamics and social systems become a little bit exposed. There could be scandals that really resurface regarding the social elite or the ethics of social media platforms. And so I would look out for those themes. On the positive side, we could see a deep transformation of the heart and a clearing out of superficial connections. But on the negative side, there could be obsession, jealousy, or power struggles within groups, our passion projects, or what we care about. On the 20th, we will then have Mercury entering Aquarius, and so the inventor's mind will kind of be sparked. We will become more inventive and revolutionary with our mindsets. We could become a little bit detached, but we will become clever and we will be investigative. And we could solve a lot of problems during this time by thinking outside of the box. And so, for example, maybe you have a sudden light bulb moment during this era that really solves a complex problem you were stuck in, or maybe you just find yourself researching weird niche topics for hours. On a society level, maybe there are breakthroughs in science or data. And with this transit lasting at least a month, this could, play out at any point. So I would remember that. And so, for example, maybe there are new studies or data that is released that really challenges an old way of thinking, maybe related to technology or even AI or the way that the human brain works. And so on the positive side, this transit can bring brilliant, innovative thinking. But on the negative side, there could be a lack of tact, speaking the truth without considering feelings, or maybe thoughts could feel a little bit scattered or a little bit, you could feel a little bit of mental anxiety at this time because Aquarius is a little bit outside of the box, if that makes sense. And then the 21st to the 23rd, we have the Sun and Mercury in Aquarius conjoining with Pluto in Aquarius, another conjunction to Pluto in Aquarius. And so this is an opportunity for a massive system upgrade. Maybe identity and thoughts are burnt away and rebuilt around a new truth. And so for yourself, this could be a complete reboot of your operating system. And this is what I was talking about earlier, why you want to build new structures during the Capricorn transits is you want to be ready for this reboot. And so an example on how this can play out is maybe you have a realization that your current career career path is obsolete, which could lead you to pivot, or maybe you just have a heated debate that changes your worldview overnight and you need to be ready to live by that ideal. And on a societal level, maybe there are shifts in technology or society. Maybe AI gets another upgrade, if that makes sense. Maybe there's a new technological release, or maybe there's like a social event that feels like the future. And all of these things could be arriving at once. And it doesn't have to be, loud and in your face, but it'll definitely be there. And so on the positive side, there's so much opportunity for empowerment through self-mastery and truth. But on the negative side, watch out for that God complex or destructive urges to really tear things down in your life. And then on the 23rd, we have Mars entering Aquarius. And so with all of these planets entering Aquarius, now's the time where our actions and our fuel and our drive will start to actually move with this Aquarian urge. So as our identity has already moved into Aquarius, with the Sun moving into Aquarius and with Mercury moving into Aquarius, we will begin to act off of these, insights and sudden events that are happening. And we will move in non-linear bursts, but we could take action through innovation and rebellion. And so a personal implication of this is maybe you work in spurts or you fight for freedom in some way. So maybe, for example, you suddenly rearrange your workspace to be more high tech, or maybe you get involved in activism or volunteering that requires a physical effort. And on a societal level, there could be more activist energy. Maybe there's a little bit more civil unrest or organized group actions aimed at reform. And so on the positive side, there could be inventive ways of getting things done that could come to you or could come to the collective. And there's high energy for causes, but on the negative side, the energy could be nervous and scattered, and there could be rebellion for rebellion's sake. So I would just say, think before you act at this time. And then on the 26th, we have a massive transit because we have Neptune re-entering Aries. And this is the spiritual warrior energy. And so the collective imagination will fire up around the self and the pioneer. So on a personal level, you are finding meaning through individual action, and you are feeling driven to really go. And your dreams will sort of shift more towards something where you do want to act, as opposed to, getting lost in the fog. And so, for example, maybe you are starting a new career path around this time based purely on a dream or intuition, or you're acting on a hunch that defies logic but turns out right. Or maybe on a societal level, the glamour of the hero returns. Maybe pop culture will start to shift towards individualistic heroic figures rather than collective groups. And so on a positive side, you could gain bravery, you could become a visionary, and you could really dream a new world into existence and take the action to do that. But on the negative side, you could confuse your ego with intuition, or you could get so fired up about your dreams that you lose the mission that you're trying to go after entirely. And then finally, at the end of the month, we will be having Mars conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. And not gonna lie, this is gonna feel very intense because there could be volatile, powerful, or all or nothing energy. And this is taking place in the sign of the future. So whatever happens at this time could really trigger, the changes we will see during Pluto in Aquarius, or we could see some very sudden changes that really kind of shake what the future is going to look like. And I know this sounds very vague and it sounds very big, but on a personal level, trust me when I say that you have the fuel to make massive changes at this time. Maybe, for example, you quit a job because it conflicts with your principles, or maybe you achieve a massive breakthrough in a project through brute force, mental energy, and this can really change your life. But on a societal level, there could be explosive events regarding social systems. Maybe, for example, there's a massive breakthrough or a breakdown in internet freedom, technology, or social hierarchy, or we could see, a sudden revolution when it comes to the systems that really do rule society, or we could see a massive boom in technology that really changes how we use the internet or our energy, basically for the rest of our lives. And I know this sounds big, but at the very least, we will have this ability to really transmutate things through our actions, and we can really, rebel against the things that we don't want to be true in our lives anymore. And society could do the same thing. And so no matter what happens, whether it's for better or for worse, acting through authenticity and leaning on the structures that you built earlier in the month will absolutely be key to keeping your sanity and to make sure that you are acting in the right directions. And so on the positive side, you have an unstoppable drive and the courage to face any shadow at this time. But on the negative side is there could be a ruthlessness or a conflict, or maybe this scorched earth approach to progress. And it could feel, a little bit scary, a little bit dangerous, but trust me when I say that we have the free will to make sure that no matter what happens within the world or within society, that we can make the changes that we need to make our lives and the people around us ready for the changing world that we will be seeing in 2026. And so I know that was a lot, but that is all of the transits that I wanted to cover for January 2026. If you want to see your personal forecast, go down to the description, look for your timestamps, and you can figure out how this energy applies to you on a more personal level. This is a massive month for you, Aries Rising, because there's so much going on at the top of your chart that it's basically forcing you into focusing on your ambitions, and it's really making you redo everything from the ground up. And since Capricorn is running your 10th house, putting the focus on your career, your ambitions, or your ideas of success and how the world sees you, it could be such a powerful time to get real about your impact on the world and your ambitions, but it can also feel heavy. And it is a sign that you're done just playing a part and you're finally ready to be a more real, authentic version of the self-starter that you know that you can be. And because the full moon in your 4th house of home on the 3rd is going to be opposing the Capricorn stellium happening, this progress with your ambitions could suddenly make you realize that you need to address something internally or within your home life, such as emotional healing or dealing with a family member that you've been ignoring while you were too busy climbing the ladder. Take what resonates with that, because it's like you're almost successfully building the house of your ambitions, but you're suddenly forced to check if the foundation of your private life can actually hold the weight of your new status or your new goals. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And so the first half of January could feel like you're carrying a ton of responsibility, and it could feel like the air in the room actually gets thicker the second you walk in, or whenever you're just thinking about your ambitions or your larger goals or your responsibilities. And you might even feel this constant tightness in your shoulders or your jaw, mostly because of the conjunction of planets, so Sun, Venus, and Mars in Capricorn, the 6th through the 10th of January. And this is really demanding that you step up and actually deliver results. And it's almost this weight of the world feeling where for a little while, you could be absorbed into your ambitions in some way, both internally and externally. And then there's going to be a square between the transiting Capricorn planets and Chiron around the 11th through the 16th. And so you might be asked to step up with your ambitions in some way, only to really find yourself dealing with that old annoying feeling that you aren't good enough or that you don't look the part. Or maybe you find that this wound of your self-confidence makes taking the next steps just super hard. And it's one of those moments where you have to show up as a leader and go for what it is that you want, even while your old wounds are being poked at, just to prove to yourself that your scars don't take away from your authority. And with Chiron going direct this month and Neptune also going direct in your 1st house of self, there is also this raw tingling heat coming back into your body, and a new ideal for yourself could be born to help you along this journey that you are now taking. And as the planets move into Aquarius and your 11th house of community and your role in society later in the month, particularly the 17th through the 23rd, that heavy grounded pressure turns into more of an electric buzz, pulling you towards connection or impact, and it stops feeling like a slow, hard climb and starts feeling like a surge of static electricity moving through your larger ambitions. And so the transition from the 10th house to the 11th house marks the moment where the focus on your ambitions turns into a focus on resources, the networks, or the contributions that will either recharge you outside of your ambitions, like maybe you just want to connect with the people who make you feel more human, or these connections could somehow contribute to your success, like maybe you are networking and connecting with people who can serve a higher cause with you. But no matter what is happening, there will definitely be a focus on your networks and communities in a way that could illuminate what your mission during the Pluto in Aquarius era might actually look like, given that the Aquarius transits are going to be conjoining with Pluto, particularly on the 19th through the 23rd. And as Mars and Pluto come together in your 11th house towards the end of the month, particularly peaking on the 27th, you could see a total all or nothing shift in your social circle or your larger ambitions in some way. And this might look like a sudden exit from a group or a cause that doesn't fit your values anymore. Or maybe you meet with a powerful collaborator who completely changes where you're heading in life. Or maybe you just simply realize what you want your role in the collective to be, and you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your life to make room for a future that is actually useful. And the specific thing to watch out for this month is that focused mentality that could end up isolating you from connections or even yourself. And so because you are so focused on being efficient and getting things done, you could accidentally start treating people or even yourself with a coldness that disregards the humanity of what you're actually reaching for. But also, the Mars-Pluto conjunction carries a little bit of a risk. It can make you feel like you have this invincibility complex, or it could give you a random urge to rebel socially, especially if you feel tested by groups or the community yourself. And if you aren't careful, that high voltage electric energy could really pull you away from those big picture or collective goals that you are focusing on. However, the opportunity here is huge because it is a chance to totally redesign the layout of your life. The whole why behind this intense pressure is to move you away from just working for the sake of working and to get you to start building for the sake of the future. And you have this rare chance to really take your big ambitions and mix them with an authentic visionary sense of who you are. And by working through those tough spots with Chiron and Neptune in your first house, you are learning how to be this spiritual warrior or somebody who leads with both discipline and heart. And real growth happens when you realize that your public image and your ambitions are most powerful when it is a direct reflection of who you are on the inside. And so January is asking you to prove that you can handle the responsibility of your own power, using it to change things not just for yourself, but for everybody. So for you, Taurus Rising, January is basically one long journey of building something massive. And so the energy starts out in the big picture and expansive part of your chart, which is the 9th house, before it eventually moves right into the sector of your public life, your ambitions, and your career in the 10th house as a massive stellium of planets eventually move into Aquarius in mid-January. This isn't just dreaming big in an empty way, though. It's more like that you're doing the hard, disciplined work of building a life philosophy that is meant to last forever and to carry you into the future. And it may feel like a major test of how you've built your world, followed by this almost test run of how this new world that you're trying to build could look in practice. Or at the very least, it could just be you writing the script of what your larger goals will look like in the real world. And because of the full moon on the 3rd is going to be opposing the Capricorn stellium happening, hitting your 3rd house of the mind, communication, and your immediate environment, all of that big picture energy might be interrupted by something very personal and emotional where you realize that your mindset, your communications, or the way in which you process your immediate environment needs to be addressed to bring this bigger picture together. And it's like you've successfully built this temple of wisdom, but the moon will step in to kind of remind you that your thoughts and your emotions are just as important as the big picture that you are building. And if you still have the lingering thoughts that don't really align with your philosophy, it could echo more than you realize around this time. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And so the month transitions with this weird feeling of stretching, like you're physically trying to ground your biggest beliefs into something that is actually applicable for your life. And because you have a massive conjunction of planets in Capricorn transiting your 9th house, particularly from the 6th to the 10th, but it will be felt for the first half of January, there's almost this real weight to the air, almost like this focused, heavy silence that you feel inside of a massive testing ground. And so you could actually feel a literal tightness in your legs, almost like your body is struggling to keep up with the huge blueprints that your mind is drawing out for your future, particularly around the 17th and 18th of January. And so you might find yourself deep in the weeds of a massive project or in the pits of expanding your horizons. And maybe you are working on publishing something. Maybe travel is involved as well, or maybe you are simply refining your life philosophy in some way. And this will then be further tested in the middle of the month as there will be a square taking place between those 9th house planets and Chiron, which is transiting your 12th house. And this will be felt particularly between the 11th through the 16th. And this house represents the unseen, the subconscious mind, and the things that transcend the mundane life. And so you might be given the opportunity to stand up as an expert or a mentor, or maybe you just find a philosophy that clicks in your life, but then you're suddenly hit with this wave of imposter syndrome or this secret fear that your mental foundations aren't as strong as you want want them to be. And this could be triggered by a few things in life, both internally and externally. So pay attention to those themes. And this is really just a moment where you have to face those hidden doubts and realize that your secret fears don't make your authority any less real. And then as we move into Aquarius season and everything shifts into your 10th house of career, legacy, and ambitions, particularly from the 17th through the 23rd, that quiet solo climb will turn into this high voltage electric pressure. And suddenly you'll feel the pressure move to your head and your throat, or the spot that really handles your public voice and the weight of your responsibilities. And it could feel like you're standing on a stage under a spotlight, or at the very least, you're standing in a pressure cooker, involving the pressure that you actually put on yourself. And this could become so bright or so pressurized that it actually feels vibrating to your body in some way. And so you're moving from the private work of figuring out your truth to the public job or the public ambition of figuring out how to actually live it. Or maybe you're just trying to achieve it no matter where you are in life. And this transition could feel like a sudden rush of adrenaline that demands you stand taller than you ever have before. Maybe you are given an opportunity to achieve, or you just feel driven by it. But these themes will be relevant regardless, as the transits conjoin with Pluto, particularly around the 19th to the 23rd. And this could illuminate a large part of what Pluto and Aquarius is generally calling you to do. And as Mars and Pluto team up in your 10th house at the end of the month, particularly around the 27th, you could see an all or nothing transformation with your ambitions or your career in some way. And so this could look like a sudden explosive promotion where you're given the power to fix a broken system. Maybe it just comes as a realization that about what you do actually want to do. Or it could be almost a scorched earth moment where you just walk away from a fancy title because you realize that the job or the thing that you're aiming for doesn't actually match the person you've become. And so take what resonates and pay attention to your career or your ambitions, especially later in January. And now the specific danger for you this month is getting a bit too my way or the highway with your beliefs, which could block you from the wonderful opportunity to expand this month. And because that Capricorn energy is so heavy in your house of philosophy, there is a risk of becoming a bit rigid or so right about everything that you end up pushing people away. Or you could be rough on yourself as well. And you might start treating your personal values like a set of strict laws instead of a living motto. And that could really pull you away from what it is that you are trying to achieve on a bigger picture scale. And once the focus moves to your career, watch out for a bit of that power grab or becoming so obsessed with your status that you end up totally burnt out. And the whole why behind all of this intensity is to really bridge the gap between what you believe and what you want to do with your life. And you're being asked to take the heavy foundations of your personal truth and actually apply them to the world around you. And so the opportunity here is nothing short of a total redesign of who you are to the public and who you are at your core. And by working through your insecurities that could be surfacing at this time and working through the shift of Neptune into your 12th house on the 26th, you're kind of learning that real authority doesn't just come from a piece of paper or a job title. It doesn't come from status. It really comes from a deep spiritual place that stays solid even when the rules are changing and even when your mind is changing, and you have to accept that your mind can change too, and that's okay. And January is really your invitation to step into a leadership role that isn't just successful, but is also revolutionary, or at the very least totally aligned with who you are behind closed doors, and that is the best way you can live. Gemini Rising, this is a really deep, almost investigative month for you because the first half of January, most of the action is going to be happening in your 8th house, and that's the heavy hidden part of your chart that deals with shared resources, intimacy, and the stuff that we usually keep behind closed doors. And so it's basically forcing you to do a total checkup of your most vulnerable parts of life. Honestly, the vibe is like kind of being in a quiet underground vault where the air is cool and the silence is heavy with everything that's being left unsaid. And it's a sign that you're just done being tethered to the past or the deep habits that no longer serve you, and you are finally ready to embody a version of yourself that is both disciplined but spiritually free at the same time. And because the full moon in your 2nd house of money and self-worth will be taking place on January 3rd, and this will be opposite of the Capricorn stellium happening, this heavy focus focused on shared resources or the deep parts of life, such as with death, intimacy, or debt, might suddenly make you realize that you need to tweak or fix something internally regarding your own earning or your spending habits or your sense of security or your sense of confidence or your self-worth. And it's like you're successfully diving into the depths and you're managing that well, but you're suddenly forced to check if your own internal foundation can actually hold the weight of what lies in the deepest parts of your life, both financially and energetically. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And the physical sensation at this time can be intense. And so you might feel this heavy weight right in your gut, almost like you're being pulled into something deep and a bit daunting. And since the Capricorn stellium is kind of running the show with a conjunction of planets, particularly from the 6th through the 10th where it peaks, there's this real weight to the air, almost like this focused heavy silence that you feel inside, as if the very core of the rawest parts of your life and soul are very potent at this time. And you're physically registering what your commitments actually cost you, both literally and energetically. And you might find yourself deep in the weeds of a major financial or energetic restructuring, like auditing a business. Maybe you go over some debts, or you finally work on healing your energetic boundaries in some way. But there's almost going to be this like test of grit between those 8th house planets and transiting Chiron in the 11th house of community, particularly from the 11th to the 16th, as they make a square. And so you might be asked to turn your attention to a friend or a cause, maybe social media, or a group in a way that requires a ton of emotional or financial resources, only to find that you're dealing with that old annoying feeling that you aren't strong enough, or like you don't truly belong, or like you don't have the resources or the worth to do it. And this can be with friendship commitments, maybe your role in society. So pay attention to all of those themes mid-January and pay attention to your self-esteem. Really see what comes up. And this will almost force you to use your head to set boundaries with a level of precision that you've never had to before, really proving that your scars don't make you any less worthy when it comes to your role in the collective or with groups, but also your role in society really shouldn't pull you away from your own deep healing. If that is needed at this time, it can go both ways. Maybe your social obligations are putting pressure that really, surface this psychological depth that needs to be addressed. And so as the planets move into Aquarius and your 9th house of expansion and vision later in the month, particularly from the 17th to the 23rd, that heavy pressure turns into more of an electric buzz. It stops feeling like this slow subterranean crawl and starts feeling like a sudden surge of static electricity that is moving through your belief systems and your life philosophies. And this transition really marks the moment where the work that you did in the shadows turns into a focus on a larger truth, your mission, and the future. And it could also spill into teaching, learning, or travel experiences as the transits conjoin Pluto, particularly from the 19th to the 23rd. And with Chiron going direct early in the month and Neptune also waking up in your 11th house of community and role in society at the end of the month, there's going to be this raw tingling heat coming back into your social life or the causes that you are a part of, and a new ideal for your contribution to the world could be born at this time. Or you may just feel the surge to really connect with others on a large scale level again, even if you felt a little bit introverted for a while. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 9th house at the end of the month, on the 27th, you could see a total all or nothing transformation in your belief systems or maybe your educational path. And so this could look like a sudden explosive decision to drop a traditional path of study for something revolutionary, or maybe you could just have this fated realization that completely changes your life philosophy, really triggered by an internal or external event, and you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your mind to make room for a future that's actually useful to you. So pay attention to those 11th house themes and dreams at the end of the month. And so the specific danger for you this month is falling into a bit of a cold and transactional headspace that could distance you away from the very intimacy that you were trying to build or repair. And because the Capricorn energy is so heavy in your 8th house of shared bonds and deep psychological work, you might find yourself treating the emotional debts or your financial debts, or really any 8th house themes, like a math problem rather than a human experience that deserves grace. And if you're not careful, you could end up being so efficient and correct about how you handle the shared pattern, that you accidentally shut out the vulnerability that makes those connections worth having in the first place. And so you might start looking at your energy as a currency to be hoarded rather than a flow to be shared and surrendered, which could create a wall between you and others, or you and your own psychology, if that makes sense. But also watch out for that Mars-Pluto conjunction in your 9th house, as it carries a risk of becoming a bit spiritually closed off or having an all or nothing attitude towards your beliefs that makes you want to burn bridges just to prove a point. And this high voltage energy can really make you feel like you have to defend your truth with a level of aggression that isn't actually necessary. However, the opportunity here is actually a massive one, because it's a chance to totally overhaul the way you exchange information and energy with the world, and to redesign your internal map. And the whole why behind this intense pressure is to move you away from managing what you owe and get you to start investing in what you believe. And there's this rare chance to take those deep and hidden transformations and to use them as the fuel for a brand new life philosophy that is actually sustainable and expansive. And by working through the friction with your community or your sense of belonging or your role in society, you are learning how to be a visionary collaborator who can handle the weight of the shared resources without really losing their freedom. And January is your invitation to prove that you can handle the responsibility of the deepest parts of life while still standing tall in your own truth, really transforming your secret burdens into a public mission that actually matters. Cancer risings, this could be a very deep and heavy month for you as you do a deep study on how you connect with others. Because that massive Capricorn stellium happening, which involves the Sun, Venus, and Mars, is going to be piling into your 7th house the first half of January, it's going to be almost entirely focused on your one-on-one relationships, your public agreements, and the duties you owe to the people that you're tethered to, whether those are romantic partners, close friends, or business partners. But it could also be a time to reflect and work on how you do connect with others in some way, regardless of where you are currently. And it's a sign that you're done just playing a role and you're finally ready to embody a version of responsibility within how you connect that is both disciplined and spiritually brave. And because of the full moon in your own sign of Cancer in your 1st house on the 3rd, and this is going to be opposing that Capricorn stellium happening, there will be this heavy focus on the other, and it could hit a little bit of a friction point that is necessary. And so you might be the one who finds that while you're busy building the structure of us, or while you're working on appeasing others or connecting with others or refining your idea of connection, that your own vitality or your physical presence will demand that you pay mind to yourself as well. And it's like you're successfully working on building the bridge with how you connect. Or there's a lot of people in your life in general this month that will just, command your attention, but you could just be suddenly forced to check in with your own heart or your literal health, especially if you've sacrificed it for the sake of others in some way. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And the physical sensation is one of being mirrored or constantly observed. And so while you might feel a literal tightness in your chest or a sense of holding your breath as you navigate these negotiations and how you relate to others at the beginning of the month, it could feel like your usual fluid and empathetic way of being has to adopt a more rigid, results-oriented posture just to meet the demands of the others in your life, especially with the conjunction of the Capricorn planets peaking from the 6th through the 10th. And it feels like the air in the room is really dense and almost tangible, like you're standing in a silent mutual understanding that really demands a lot of work to maintain if you want to maintain it correctly. And so another dynamic to watch out for this month really involves the square between the 7th house Capricorn planets and Chiron transiting your 10th house, which will peak from the 11th through the 16th. And so you might be asked to step up in your ambitions or your career, whether literally or emotionally, only to find that the demands of others or an old insecurity about your right to lead and your public reputation could poke at your wounds in some way. And so maybe some disagreements or something about how you connect with others could call into question your competence within your career, or vice versa. Maybe the demands and wounds in your career could call into question how you do approach others in your life. And so it's one of those moments where you have to prove your worth earth through stoic and disciplined action and really show that your scars don't make you any less capable of handling high responsibility within your ambitions or in a public space. And refinement really is the only way to improve how you connect and how you approach your goals. And so as the planets begin their shift into Aquarius and your 8th house later in the month, particularly from the 17th to the 23rd, that sensation will shift from an external gaze of others into a more internal high voltage vibration. And so the pressure moves from your chest into your gut, shifting from the us to the depth of us, really dealing with shared resources and the psychological transformation that come from merging with forces outside of yourself, whether it's others that you're merging with, or maybe it's just your psychological entanglements that you're finally addressing. And it stops feeling like conversations and connections are the focus, and it starts feeling like a systematic, high-frequency overhaul of the deepest dynamics that rule over your life. It could involve depth and intimacy or your deep psychology, so take what resonates with that. And so with the Aquarius transits also conjoining Pluto, especially from the 19th through the 23rd, this marks a moment where you start to see what your mission in this new era actually looks like, because there are going to be a lot of conjunctions to Pluto and Aquarius, and so you will see those themes activated a little bit. And with Chiron going direct this month and Neptune waking up in your 10th house of career and public image, there will be this raw, tingling heat coming back into your public life, and a new ideal for your role in the world and your external ambitions could also be born this month. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 8th house towards the end of the month, particularly around the 27th, you could see a total all or nothing transformation within your shared resources, your deep psychology, or your intimate life. And this could look like a sudden, explosive exit from a joint investment that doesn't fit your future. Or maybe it's this scorched earth psychological breakthrough that finally burns away a toxic power dynamic within a shared space. Or it could just be a realization in how you approach intimacy. And you're basically clearing out the dead weight of old emotional debts to make room for intense, deep, and psychological entanglements that can actually help you gain trust and deep healing if you are willing to transmute past pains or traumas or entanglements and surrender to the flow of what the month is asking you for. And so I would just pay attention to 8th house themes at the end of the month just to see how this could show up. And the specific thing to watch out for this month is becoming so focused on the rules of your relationships that you end up feeling like a prisoner within how you commit. And so because you are under so much pressure to either be a reliable partner or a steady professional or to start to connect more with those 7th house transits, you might accidentally start suppressing your own needs for comfort and safety just to keep the structure of relationships in your life from cracking. And there's a risk here of falling into a bit of a martyr complex where you feel that being disciplined in love really makes you cold towards yourself, or you could ignore your own internal weather in the process. But also, if you're not careful, you could build partnerships that are structurally sound but emotionally hollow. And then with the Mars-Pluto conjunction in your 8th house towards the end of the month, this high voltage energy can make you feel a sudden and almost desperate urge to seize control of shared finances or emotional dynamics if you feel like your power is being threatened. And so this could manifest as a scorched earth policy in your private life where you feel the need to dominate the narrative to feel safe again. However, the opportunity of the month is huge because it is your chance to totally redesign the way you show up in the world without losing your heart. And the whole why behind this intense relationship pressure is to move you away from just pleasing other people or having a broken idea of relationships and to start empowering yourself in the process. And you have this rare chance to take your natural empathy and to ground it in a leadership style that actually commands respect and longevity. And by working through those insecurities about your public image and your right to lead, you are learning how to be your authentic authority who can really hold space for others while still holding the line for themselves. And so January is asking you to prove that you can handle the responsibility of connection without sacrificing the person you've worked so hard to become, really turning your connections into a foundation for a much larger and much more powerful future. For you, Leo Rising, January is going to be an intense masterclass in redesigning your daily existence and how you serve the world. And because you have this heavy Capricorn energy occupying your 6th house of health, routine, and the mechanics of work for the first half of the month, it is all about the gritty internal work of managing your vessel or your body or your time. But this month, we will see a transition, the moment where the work of the self and your daily routine will turn into a focus on your connections and how you relate to others, really illuminating what your mission is during the Pluto and Aquarius era. And so this is a sign that you're done just being a worker bee and you're finally ready to embody a version of yourself that is both disciplined and visionary in your quest for knowledge, no matter if this is a personal journey or a larger one that you're going through. And because of the full moon happening in your 12th house of the subconscious and spirituality on the 3rd, this will be in Cancer, by the way, and it will be opposing the Capricorn stellium happening in your 6th house. The heavy focus on doing and your 6th house routine could suddenly make you realize that you need to fix something internally, like a deep-seated emotional pattern, maybe even sleeping patterns, or you need total isolation that you've been ignoring while you've been too busy being productive, or vice versa. Maybe after some burnout, you realize it's time to balance your drive with some rest. It's like you're successfully building the engine of your life, but you're suddenly forced to check if your soul and your subconscious actually have the fuel to keep it running. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And the physical sensation you may feel this month is one of controlled resistance. So you could feel a literal heavy weight in your bones, your knees, or your joints, almost like the daily operations of your life are being tested for efficiency with the conjunction of Capricorn planets peaking from the 6th through the 10th. And so you could notice this cooling of your usual radiant or expressive nature, no matter how that looks, as your life force is really channeled into the practical yet stoic work of getting your daily habits in order. And honestly, this atmosphere could feel like the inside of a well-oiled machine or a disciplined training camp. There's almost this persistent rhythmic pressure to be productive within your immediate environment, and you are physically registering the cost of your habits and feeling the weight of your daily endurance. And you might find yourself deep in the weeds of a major lifestyle overhaul. Maybe you're taking on a new fitness regimen or a high-level project at work that requires total mastery, where you're refining your skills to perfection. But another dynamic playing out this month really involves the square between transiting Capricorn planets and Chiron in your 9th house, particularly from the 11th through the 16th. And so you might be asked to step up in your job or your daily service in a way that conflicts with your philosophical beliefs or your desire to travel or expand and be free, especially with Aries in the 9th house. And this could trigger that old annoying feeling that your daily life isn't aligned with your higher purpose or your higher learning goals. And it could be one of those moments where you have to use your intellect to solve the problems that scare you the most and somehow ensure that what it is that you're working towards starts to shift in ways that support both your daily duties. They don't burn you out, but they also support your higher calling and your desire for freedom as well. And then as planets shift into Aquarius and your 7th house of partnerships later in the month, particularly from the 17th to the 23rd, that sensation moves from an internal discipline into a vibrating external presence physically. And so the pressure moves from your gut and limbs to like almost the skin of your face and your hands, or the parts of yourself that reach out and connect to the other. It could be your mind as well, especially because Aquarius is in our 7th house. Whether this is with a romantic partner though, a close friend, a client, or just the idea of how we connect, this Aquarius stellium could really address how you relate to others and illuminate themes that you may see during the Pluto and Aquarius era. So pay attention to this time. And it feels like a sudden surge of static electricity moving through the air between you and the people that you connect with. So use this transit to actively pay attention to how you are relating and how that relating really takes place. And with Chiron going direct this month and Neptune also shifting into your 9th house at the end of the month, there's this raw, tingling heat coming back to your belief systems and your sense of purpose. And a new ideal for your life's meaning could be born at this time. And so pay attention to what excites you throughout the entirety of January. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 7th house at the end of the month on the 27th, you could see this total all or nothing shift within your closest bonds or professional partnerships in some way. And this might look like a fated meeting with a powerful collaborator who completely changes where you're heading, or maybe this moment where you really demand more innovation and freedom in the way that you relate and connect with others as you feel the conjunctions to Pluto. Or maybe you just simply realize the type of people that you do want in your life through an internal or external experience that happens at this time. And so you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your social world to make room for a future that's actually useful. And so the specific danger for you this month is falling into a bit of a perfectionist trap where you become so obsessed with the mechanics and the efficiency of your daily life that you end up feeling like a machine rather than a human. And because that Capricorn energy early in the month is so heavy in your 6th house, you really risk becoming a slave to your own productivity, or perhaps even becoming a bit of a drill sergeant to those around you or your work environment. And you could start treating your physical well-being and your professional duties like a cold set of numbers to be managed. And if you're not careful, that high-level discipline could lead to total burnout or feeling completely disconnected from your own warmth. But also, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 7th house at the end of the month, really watch out for a bit of a power struggle or an all-or-nothing attitude with your partnerships, because you could feel a sudden and intense urge to dominate the narrative or demand a level of freedom that feels disruptive to the people that you love. However, the opportunity this month is actually massive because it is the chance to bridge the gap between your daily grind and your higher purpose. The whole why behind this intense pressure is to move you away from just being that worker bee and to get you to start being the visionary leader of your own life. And you really have this rare chance to take the gritty, disciplined habits you are building and use them as a structural support for this brand new way of connecting with others. And by working through those insecurities about your beliefs and your higher mission, you are learning that real authority comes from how much integrity you bring to your daily service. And January really is an invitation to prove that you can handle the responsibility of your own routine while still staying open to the electric growth that is happening when you truly relate to other people. For you, Virgo Rising, January feels like walking into a high-end metaphorical creation studio almost, where the air is heavy with the debris of your creative or joyous energy. And because the heavy Capricorn stellium is moving through your 5th house of creativity, joy, and self-expression, the first half of the month is all about building your personal masterpieces and refining your passions with your bare hands, whether it deals with art, children, romance, or just with what brings you joy. And this transition marks the moment where your personal joy and creativity have to be integrated into your daily routines, potentially illuminating what your mission during the Pluto and Aquarius era might be. And it's a sign that you're done just being a servant to the system and you're finally ready to embody a version of yourself that is both disciplined and a visionary architect of whatever lifestyle you dream of. Because of the full moon in your 11th house of community, friends, and social goals, on January 3rd, this is happening in Cancer, and this will be happening opposite of the Capricorn stellium happening. This private, disciplined work of your masterpiece or how you tap into joy could suddenly get hit with a friction point where you realize you need to tweak something regarding your connection to society, your groups, your friends, or maybe even your social media networks. Or vice versa, maybe the outside networks inspire and refine the way you approach creativity or joy or 5th house themes in your life. And it's like you're successfully building your temple of personal expression, but you're suddenly forced to check if your creation actually has the soul that resonates with your community or really fits into a place in society. And so it is a balancing act that will be needed as we kick off the month. The physical sensation of, especially of the first half of the month, is one of weighted creative energy. And so you might feel your heartbeat as more intentional, or your perception of the world becomes a bit more focused. And your body registers this as a need to cool your nervous system energy so that you can allocate your energy properly during early to mid-January. And so it could almost feel like that mental fizz with a grounded, stoic heat in your hands and shoulders, almost as if your joy and your creative drives are no longer longer something fleeting, but are something that you are physically constructing with structural integrity, or at the very least, you are working to get to this point with the conjunction of Capricorn planets taking place, especially between January 6th through the 10th. And it's a period where making something, whether it's art or a romantic bond, your connection to children, or the way that you cultivate your unique talents, feels like a serious project that requires you to really get down to the nitty-gritty. And you might find yourself finalizing a complex creative project. Maybe you're formalizing a romance or getting serious about the pursuits of joy in your life, while all of these planets are in Capricorn, really feeling that drive for you. And so going one step at a time and working on what that joy looks like will be key this month. And another theme that could come up involves the square between those 5th house planets in Capricorn and Chiron in your 8th house, especially from the 11th through the 16th. And so you might be the one wanting to invest heavily in a passion project or a commitment that's romantic, only to really find yourself dealing with old annoying fears about your long-term shared security, your vulnerability, or a complicated financial issue involving others. And this dynamic can play out both ways. Maybe the deep parts of your life, like debt, really spark insecurities in your joy in some way as well. And it's one of those moments where you have to use your practical Virgo intellect to solve a complex hidden problem in the deep parts of your life, really proving to yourself that your creativity is supported by your ability in all areas of your life. And as the planets shift into Aquarius in your 6th house of service, health, and daily routine later in the month, particularly from the 17th to the 23rd, that focus workshop of joy will turn into a high-frequency electric buzz in your nervous system, so mid-month could feel a little bit busier to you. So pay attention for that. The pressure may feel like it migrates from your heart to your hands or into your gut, or the part of you that processes the utility of your life. And it could feel like the air is suddenly charged with a static current that really demands systematic efficiency in your daily work and your physical habits. And this marks the time when the Aquarius transits will conjoin with Pluto, particularly from the 19th to the 23rd. And so maybe your work gets busy or your habits demand attention, or you feel more motivated to overhaul your work and day-to-day habits. But also with Chiron going direct this month and Neptune waking up in your 8th house of shared resources and deep transformation, there is this raw tingling heat coming back into the deepest corners of your life, such as intimacy and deep psychology, and a new ideal for your security and how you approach the deepest aspects in your life. It could be born at this time. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 6th house towards the end of the month, particularly peaking on the 27th, you could see a total all or nothing shift in your workspace or maybe your daily routine in some way from the themes that have been building up this month. And this could look like a scorched earth decision to leave a rigid corporate structure and to start a revolutionary independent venture, or maybe a routine or health reset could take place, really stemming from external or internal moments of realization that come towards the end of the month. And this could change the way that you function and use your skills every day. So I would just pay attention to your work habits and your health and your routines, especially around late January. And you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your schedule to make room for a future that is actually useful. And so the specific energy to watch out for this month is becoming so focused on the structural integrity of your joy and your creativity that you end up sucking the life right out of them. And because that heavy Capricorn energy is in your 5th house of passion and expression, there is a risk of becoming too rigid or results oriented with the things that are supposed to make you feel alive. You might start treating your hobbies, your romance, or your creative projects like a job that needs to be finished rather than an experience that needs to be savored, which could leave you feeling a little bit hollow or even creatively paralyzed. And if you're not careful, you might build a masterpiece that is technically perfect but has no soul, kind of like what people describe AI to be like. And so also, once the focus moves into your 6th house towards the end of the month, watch out for that scorched earth approach to your work or your health, because you could feel a sudden and intense urge to blow up your entire schedule or quit a project just because it feels outdated. And you may have to make sure that you're not just overreacting out of a need for control. However, the opportunity here is nothing short of a total redesign of your daily utility and your creative heart. And the whole why behind this intensity is to teach you how to turn your personal sparks into something that is lasting and can really fulfill your joy. And you are being asked to take the heavy foundations of what you love and actually apply them to service and how you provide to the world. And by working through those deep insecurities about your shared resources, your deep psychological fears, your financial entanglements, you are learning that your creativity is actually a very powerful tool that can support your long-term security. And so January is your invitation to step into a role where you are both the disciplined architect and the visionary artist or the creative, really proving that your daily work can be a direct reflection of your unique and powerful heart. For you Libra risings, January is a massive structural overhaul of your private world that eventually radiates outward into a high voltage creative awakening. And because you have the heavy Capricorn energy occupying your fourth house at this time, which represents your home, your roots, your family, and your innermost sense of self, the first half of the month is all about the foundational setting of your life. And honestly, the atmosphere feels like this old stone cellar at this time. It's cool, it's silent, it's solid. And this is where you can really work on the very bones or the structure of your life, whether that's your literal physical dwelling or your internal sense of security. And it's a sign that you're done just keeping the peace and you're finally ready to embody a version of yourself that is both anchored and authentically free. And it's a great step for you this month, whether it's an internal step or an external leap. And because of the Cancer full moon in your 10th house of career and public image on the 3rd, making an opposition to this Capricorn stellium, this heavy focus on your roots in the 4th house might suddenly hit a friction point with your life in the public eye. And so maybe you find yourself standing in the middle of a construction zone at home while simultaneously receiving a major professional accolade or facing a surge of ambition. At the very least, maybe you're trying to go after your goals, or maybe the reverse can feel true in some way. Maybe you feel pulled away from your ambitions because of your need to address some things within your foundations or your home life. And it's like you're successfully working on the foundation of your life, or you're really putting a lot of focus in that, but you're really going to be suddenly forced to check if your public climb and your career goals or your leadership style are actually safe enough to handle the weight of your private reality. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And the physical sensation, especially in the first half of the month, is one of such deep density. And so you might feel a literal weight at the base of your spine or in your feet, as if you're physically being anchored to the ground that you stand on in some way that's very Capricornian. And you could notice a cooling of your usual social or airy temperament as your life force is channeled into the stoic work of managing your domestic stability, your family, your innermost self, or even your lineage. And you're physically registering the responsibility of your home life and feeling the grit required to keep your private corner solid, especially with the conjunction of Capricorn planets peaking between the 6th and the 10th of January. And so you could find yourself deep in the weeds of a significant home renovation. Maybe there's a legal negotiation involving property, or at the very least, maybe you're just getting very clear about your family boundaries and your internal roots in some way. And I know a lot of 2025 has addressed these themes for you. I feel like I've talked about this a lot with Libra risings, but this could simply be just the time where these themes become a bit more solidified in practice, or maybe you actually start making ground. And another dynamic this month will involve the square between those transiting Capricorn planets and Chiron in your 7th house, which will peak between the 11th through the 16th. And so you might face a situation where a family responsibility, for example, triggers an old wound regarding the right to be yourself within a partnership, or the reverse can also take place or something similar. So maybe a connection you have calls into focus some deep wounds that you really need to heal. So I'd pay attention to both 4th and 7th house themes mid-month just to see how that plays out. And as the planets begin to shift into Aquarius and your 5th house of pleasure, romance, and self-expression later in the month, particularly from the 17th to the 23rd, that heavy subterranean pressure shifts into this vibrating electric buzz in your chest and in your heart center. And it almost feels like a sudden surge of static electricity moving through your rib cage, shifting the work of the home to the shock of the new joy that you're trying to build. And this transition really marks the moment where your internal stability turns into a focus on maybe this radical, innovative joy or a visionary approach to your passions, maybe what brings you joy, your hobbies, art, children, or romance. And this will especially be true as these planets conjoin with Pluto between the 19th and the 23rd of January. And so this could be a major time where your Pluto and Aquarius mission becomes clear. And so I would pay attention to what themes of joy come up around these dates. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 5th house towards the end of the month, particularly on the 27th, you could see a total all or nothing transformation in your creative life or your approach to romance in some way. And so this could look like a scorched earth decision to walk away from a hobby that has become more of a chore to really launch a revolutionary passion project. Or maybe you have a fated romantic encounter that really demands you throw out the old rules of fitting in. Or maybe you just simply redefine what joy means to you. And this can be triggered by either an internal or external event. And so I would pay attention to sudden insights around joy, especially at the end of January. And so you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your heart to make room for a future that is actually vibrant. And so the specific danger for you this month is getting a bit too stuck in the basement of your own life, where you become so focused on your private security or your domestic boundaries that you end up feeling isolated from the world. And because that Capricorn energy is so heavy in your 4th house of home and roots, there is a risk of becoming a bit defensive or even cold towards your family or those that you live with as you try to build this, fortress or this fence around your innermost self. But you could also just start treating your own emotional needs like a set of strict rules that everybody or even yourself has to strictly follow. And if you are not careful, that need for stability could turn into a restrictive atmosphere also for yourself. And you don't want that, obviously. But also watch out for that Mars-Pluto conjunction in your 5th house at the end of the month, as this also carries a risk of this, dynamic where maybe you reject work or the hard work that you have to do or your responsibilities in favor of play. However, the opportunity here is actually huge because there is a chance to totally rebuild the foundations of your self-worth. And the whole why behind this intense domestic pressure is to really move you away from just keeping the peace and to get you to start building a safe haven. And you have a rare chance to take your inner stability and use it as a launch pad for a brand new and authentic way of expressing yourself. And January really is your invitation to prove that you can be both anchored in reality and free to express yourself. And you can really use your private strength to fuel a future that is actually vibrant and honest and actually, transforms your life to be more joyous. Scorpio Rising's January really starts with this sharp, almost mechanical feeling as that heavy Capricorn energy occupies your 3rd house, and that's your communication, your daily logic, your mind, and your immediate environment. The first half of the month is all about this mechanical sharpening of how you process the world around you. And honestly, the atmosphere feels like being in this logistical office that is very dense with information and mental stimulation, where every tiny detail of your local environment will carry massive weight. And the transition from Capricorn to Aquarius planets mid-month will also mark the moment where the mechanics of the mind really turn into the creation of the soul, really illuminating what your mission during the Pluto and Aquarius era could actually look like at the very foundations. It's a sign that you're done with these unconscious mental habits and you're finally ready to be the creator of your own internal and external sense of safety and security. And because of the Cancer full moon taking place in your 9th house of higher vision, travel, and life philosophy on the 3rd, which will oppose the Capricorn stellium happening, this practical focus on your local world in the 3rd house may suddenly hit a friction point. And so maybe you find that while you're trying to build the local structure and really refine your mindset, maybe a sudden emotional realization about your long-term expansion goals or your spiritual beliefs really demands your attention. It's like you're suddenly building the office of your mind, but you're really suddenly forced to check if your daily talk and your immediate environment are actually aligned with the bigger truth and the meaning that you're trying to live. You need to make sure that your thoughts and your lifestyle, but also your mindset and your higher learning goals, your philosophies, how you expand your horizons, you need to make sure that all of these things are aligned and in unison. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And physically, you could feel a literal tightness in your jaw or your throat for the first half of the month, almost as if every word that you speak is really being filtered before you let it out, and your body will register this by the cooling down of your usual deep and investigative intensity, and it will be replaced with this stoic, results-oriented framework for your thoughts and your communications, especially peaking with the conjunction of Capricorn planets from the 6th through the 10th. And you might feel a persistent tension in your shoulders as you manage a high volume of errands, maybe logistical demands, all of which require some serious grit. Like, you may be very mentally busy at this time, or you may be having to do a lot of work that requires brain work, and you might find yourself finalizing maybe a highly technical mental contract. Maybe you're navigating difficult negotiations, or at the very least, you're getting clear about your daily boundaries and ensuring that the way your mind is directed isn't wasting your energy. You don't want to be thinking about things that don't actually matter, and you want to make sure that your mind is going towards what does matter. And then we may see another scenario play out this month with the transiting Capricorn planets and Chiron in your 6th house in Aries, forming a square which will peak from the 11th through the 16th. And so you might be asked to master a complex new administrative system, for example, only to find yourself dealing with an old health flare-up. Maybe you deal with burnout or an annoying feeling that you aren't competent enough in your daily routine. Or maybe the reverse could be true. Maybe the busyness of your daily routines really sparks insecurity and mental noise in your own mind. Or maybe you just feel like your mind is a little bit all over the place, and it's one of those moments where you have to use your disciplined mind to solve the physical problems that scare you the most and prove that your strength is a foundation that can withstand the stress of your routine. No matter what it is you do, you need your health and your routine and your mindset to also find a sync up this month. And as the planets begin their shift into Aquarius in your 4th house of home and roots later in the month, particularly from the 17th to the 23rd, the sharp mental focus will shift into this high voltage electric vibration at your core, specifically at your gut and the base of your spine. And it can feel like a sudden surge of static electricity moving through the walls of your home and the energetic roots of your being, whether that's your physical home or your internal sense of safety. And this will mark the period where the Aquarius transits will conjoin with Pluto, particularly from the 19th through the 23rd, and this will really force you to address what home and safety means to you, but it could also illuminate what issues you do have surrounding your home or your roots, and this could really align with what your mission during the Pluto and Aquarius era might be. And with Chiron going direct this month and Neptune waking up in your 6th house at the end of the month, there's almost this raw, tingling heat coming back into your physical habits, and a new ideal for how you manage your body and your daily service could be born at this time. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 4th house towards the end of the month, particularly the 27th, you could see a total all or nothing transformation in your living situation or your family dynamics. And this could look like an intense decision, for example, to sell a family home or leave a traditional living arrangement to launch a very different type of living situation. Or maybe it could just simply be a faded realization about your roots that changes your sense of security forever. And so I would pay attention to your sense of safety, your home, and your roots at the end of the month to see what comes up. And you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your foundations to make room for a future that allows for total independence. And so the specific thing to watch out for this month is falling into a bit of a mental gridlock where you become so focused on the logic and the logistics of your life that you end up losing sight of the bigger picture. And because that Capricorn energy is so heavy in your 3rd house of communication, there is a risk of becoming too cynical or even sharp with your words as you try to manage the high volume of demands. And you might start treating your daily interactions like a series of business deals to be closed. And if you're not careful, that stoic and results-oriented framework could lead to feeling a little bit mentally exhausted or emotionally detached. And also, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 4th house towards the end of the month, I would watch out for a foundational crisis or an all or nothing urge to totally overhaul your living situation, and don't do anything impulsive with that. However, the opportunity here is nothing short of a total redesign of your external and internal sanctuary. And so the whole why behind this intense mental pressure is to really bridge the gap between how you think and how you live. And you are being asked to take the sharp tools of your mind and use them to really build an architecture for your soul that actually feels safe. And by working through those daily health habits and the insecurities around your physical competence or your work, maybe in some cases you are really learning that your strength is a foundation that can withstand the stress of your routine. And January is your invitation to step into a role where you are the creator of your own reality, proving that your daily logic can be a direct path to a much deeper and more authentic sense of security. Sagittarius Rising, this is a really grounding and heavy-hitting month for you as you kind of perform this check on the very materials that sustain your life. And because you have that massive Capricorn stellium happening this month and it's moving through your second house of values, money, and self-worth, but also personal assets, the first half of January is all about such deep material gravity. And honestly, the atmosphere kind of feels like being inside a high security vault or a cold, quiet treasury where every move you make is calculated for its long-term cost and its contribution to your security. And it's a sign that you're done with unconscious earning and you're finally ready to be the architect of your own value system. And you are also ready to maybe spend your time or your resources a lot more meticulously, and you will become a little bit more aware of what is around you to utilize to the best of your ability. And this will be the time where you really refine how to do that. And because of the full moon in your 8th house of shared resources, transformation, and deep intimacy on the 3rd, which will be in the sign of Cancer and opposing this Capricorn stellium happening, there will be this heavy focus on your individual resources, your self-worth, or maybe even your earning potential in some cases. And so there could be this friction point with your shared debts, your deep emotional bonds, or your deepest psychology, as well as your resources and your worth. And you may find that while you are trying to build your fortress of self-reliance, if you're trying to build, your resources, if you're trying to build your talents and your self-worth, maybe there's this deeply intimate matter in your life that really demands this emotional realization that could feel psychologically vulnerable, but also liberating. It's like you're successfully building the house of your resources and your self-worth, but you're suddenly forced to check if the foundation of what is outside of your control, like debts or intimacy, maybe partners' income, or even just your deep psychology, is solid. It's solid enough to handle these new skills or this new income that you're trying to earn. And this can really ensure that every area of life that you have is encouraging this growth that you're trying to build. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And the physical sensation during the first half of the month is so dense because you could feel a heavy weight maybe in your jaw, your neck, and your hands, as if your physical body is the actual vessel for everything that you own and every skill you possess, and it is now time to sharpen those tools. But you might also notice a cooling of your usual buoyant and fiery optimism as your life force is really channeled into the stoic, results-oriented work of managing your resources and your sense of self-worth, especially with the conjunction of Capricorn planets peaking from January 6th through the 10th. And so you're kind of physically registering the grit it will take to sustain your life, and you will feel that responsibility right in your bones, especially with the new moon coming in the middle of the month. And you might find yourself deep in the weeds of maybe a major financial or skill-based restructuring. Maybe you're renegotiating a salary. Maybe you're auditing your expenses, or at the very least, you're getting very clear about your personal boundaries and your self-worth. But also maybe you're adopting new skills, you're adopting new habits, and you're figuring out a plan on how you can do that in a way that doesn't waste your time and gives you the maximum payout, if that makes sense. And another dynamic this month you could see involves the square between the transiting Capricorn planets and Chiron in your 5th house, which will peak from the 11th through the 16th. And so you could face a situation where a financial obligation or a focus on duty really triggers an old wound regarding your right to play or your right to have fun and to feel feel that childlike joy. And so your creative expression could be challenged, or maybe there's this fear that you can't afford to be joyful in some way. And it's one of those moments where you have to use your disciplined mind to solve the money and worth problems that scare you the most, so that you can prove that your second house value is the foundation for your fifth house creative courage. You have to find a way to let your joy and what you are worth and what you own coexist at the same time and to live in harmony. And as the planets begin their shift into Aquarius and your third house of communication and daily logic, or your mindset, later in the month, particularly from the 17th to the 23rd, that heavy energy and pressure will shift into a high voltage buzzing energy, maybe in your throat and in your nervous system. And it feels like a sudden surge of static electricity moving through your daily interactions, shifting from the weight of what I have to the shock of what I say or how I communicate my ideas. And this transition marks a moment where your focus on security and assets will instead turn into a focus on visionary, radical, or out-of-the-box communications and thought patterns, and also your relationship to your immediate environment. And this will especially peak as these transits conjoin with Pluto, peaking around the 19th to the 23rd. And so I would pay attention to the shifts in your mindset between these dates, as it may give you an idea of what Pluto and Aquarius in its entirety can look like for you. And finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your third house towards the end of the month, particularly around the 27th, you could see this total all or nothing transformation in your local network, your neighborhood, your mindset, your communications. And so, for example, this can look like this scorched earth or very sudden decision to leave a stagnant neighborhood or a restrictive social circle, or maybe you want to cut things off of your social media that is really messing with your mindset, or you really want to start learning and rewiring your mind to work in a specific way that is more beneficial to you. Maybe you want to think more outside of the box, or maybe there's an event, for example, whether internal or external, that could illuminate and light up your thoughts in a way that is very important to you. And so I would pay attention to that in late January. And you're basically cleaning out any dead weight from your mind to make room for a future that really allows for total intellectual independence. And so the specific danger for you this month is becoming a bit too transactional with your own worth, whether you start measuring your value by only what you have or what you can produce. And because that Capricorn energy is so heavy in your second house of values and money, there is a risk of falling into a scarcity mindset or becoming so focused on financial duty that you end up feeling like a servant to your own bank account or to your own life. And you might start treating your skills and your self-esteem like a set of assets to be hoarded rather than a part of your identity to be enjoyed. And if you're not careful, this heavy material gravity could pull you away from your usual sense of optimism. But I would also watch out for the Mars-Pluto conjunction in your third house at the end of the month, as this also carries a little bit of a risk of mental obsession or a sudden urge to use your voice in a way that's a little bit too intense. However, the opportunity here is actually massive, because it is a chance to totally overhaul the way you sustain your life and your truth. And the whole why behind this intense material pressure is to move you away from the unconscious earning and to get you to consciously start building in your life. And you have this rare chance to take your personal assets and use them as the fuel for a brand new way of thinking. And by working through those creative blocks and the fears around your right to play, you are learning that your value comes from courage and your unique heart, and it is your job to express that, and it is your human right to express yourself however you see fit. And January is really your invitation to prove that you can handle the responsibility of your own resources while staying open to this visionary mindset or these visionary ideas that are waiting to be born in your mind. Capricorn Rising, January is basically the definitive moment of what I'd like to call a true reset period for your entire being. And because you've got this massive stellium of planets occupying your first house, for the first half of the month, the energetic focus isn't just on your life, it is on the very essence of who you are, your appearance, your identity, and your physical vitality. And the atmosphere may feel like standing on a high, silent mountain peak at dawn when the air is thin, it's crisp, and it demands your total presence and attention so that you know how to handle the energy. And right now you are the project, the builder, and the building itself all at once in an interesting metaphorical way. And it's a sign that you're done just performing a role and you're finally ready to be the architect and the creator of your own reality, both internally and externally. But it will be totally up to you on how you want to put those pieces together. Because of the full moon in Cancer on the 3rd, which is opposite of this Capricorn stellium happening, this is going to be lighting up your 7th house of partnerships, and the intense focus on yourself may hit a little bit of a friction point. And so you may find that while you are trying to build your mountain of identity, maybe a significant other, a partner, a friend, or a business associate could express a deep emotional need for your presence, challenging how you connect. Or perhaps in this quest of building yourself, you feel this yearning to connect with another person in order to become in touch with something softer in yourself once again. So I would take what resonates with this, and you are suddenly constructing the structure of you, but the moon will force you to check internally if the new identity still has room for a heart and a home for the people you relate to. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And so the physical sensation, especially during the first half of the month, is one of such deep density, and it has a heavy structural focus, almost as if your physical body is being reinforced with steel and stone. And so it's really important for you to determine how these pieces are being laid, because you don't want a wonky foundation. And so throughout the first half of the month, you could feel a literal tightness in your knees, maybe your teeth, and your skeletal system, as if your entire frame is being recalibrated to carry a much heavier, more significant load for the future, especially with the conjunction Capricorn planets peaking from the 6th through the 10th. And so you could find yourself undergoing a total rebranding of your physical presence or your personal health, or maybe you are just shedding an old identity that holds you back, or maybe you're just taking on new responsibilities in some way where you are the person who's kind of given the reins in whatever it is that you're doing. And so you could also be committing to a grueling physical regimen, or maybe a professional overhaul of your public image or your appearance that requires you to be some specific way, and you're kind of like tweaking yourself to be whatever way that this new responsibility needs you to be in whatever life resonates. But another dynamic playing out this month will involve the square between those first house planets with Chiron in your 4th house of roots, with Chiron and Aries peaking from January 11th through the 16th. And so you might experience maybe a domestic emergency, maybe a family wound, maybe a personal wound that really challenges your new sense of authority, really forcing you to prove that your personal strength and your vitality are not just a mask that you put on for the outside world, but a foundation that can actually withstand a storm at your roots. But you could also see the reverse play out. So perhaps there are changes that you are looking to experience within your home and roots, and this is really challenging your sense of being or your identity or your conditioning. So I would take what resonates here, because it can go both ways. And then as the planets begin their shift into Aquarius and your 2nd house of values, possessions, and self-worth later in the month, particularly from the 17th through the 23rd, that heavy grounded pressure will shift into a high voltage electric hum. And so the sensation moves from your bones into your throat and into your hands, which are the parts of you that communicate what you're worth and the parts of you that hold your resources and your skills. And so it could feel like a sudden surge of static electricity moving through you, shifting from the work of the self into the value of the self. And so maybe you're working towards taking on new income sources. Maybe you want to develop a new skill, or maybe you're just working on your confidence. And this transition illuminates what your mission during the Pluto in Aquarius era might look like, especially as these transits will conjoin with Pluto in your 2nd house from the 19th to the 23rd. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 2nd house at the end of the month, particularly the 27th, I would expect this radical all or nothing transformation to your income, your assets, or your self-worth. And this could look like an intense decision to maybe walk away from a stable salary to launch, this revolutionary, unconventional venture that really reflects your true values. Or maybe it's just a sudden, explosive realization about your worth that changes the way you negotiate forever. And you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your resource pool to make room for a future that is actually sustainable. And so the specific thing to watch out for this month is becoming so focused on your self-reconstruction that you end up creating a bit of a cold wall between yourself and the people who love you. And because that Capricorn energy is so concentrated in your first house of identity, there is a risk of becoming a bit too stoic or even unreachable as you try to build this new version of yourself with total discipline. You might start treating your own life and your body like a high-stakes construction project that doesn't allow for any emotional weakness. And if you're not careful, that need for total authority could lead to a feeling of deep isolation or disconnect from your own heart. I would also watch out for the Mars-Pluto conjunction in your second house at the end of the month, as this also carries a risk of this power grab regarding your money or your self-worth. So maybe you feel a sudden but intense urge to blow up your current income stream or career path just to prove that you are in control, or just because you feel like you want to do this thing, but you don't actually have a plan for making it happen. However, the opportunity here is nothing short of a total rebirth of your entire identity, because the whole why behind this intense self-focus is to really teach you how to be the creator of your own destiny without really losing your humanity. And you are being asked to take the heavy responsibility of your power and to use it to build a life that is actually sustainable and honest. And by working through the domestic wounds and the insecurities at your roots, you are really learning that your strength is a foundation that can hold the weight of a truly authentic life. And January is your invitation to step into a leadership role that is not just successful, but also revolutionary and helps you embody the person you want to be. For you, Aquarius Rising, January is basically a seismic shift from the deep hidden corners of your subconscious into the high voltage world-altering rebirth of your physical identity, your vitality, and who you are. And because that heavy Capricorn stellium is occupying your 12th house of the subconscious and spirituality for the first half of the month, it's all about working towards subconscious healing and unearthing, or at the very least, you are tackling the structural work of the unseen parts of your life. However, the atmosphere may feel like a darkened room where the only sound is your own breathing in a weird way, and it's the energy of you working behind the scenes on your spiritual foundations. And so you are likely physically registering the responsibility of your soul's private work, and it could feel like a cooling of your usual detached intellectual energy as you focus on your internal structures and hidden patterns. And it's a sign that you are done with the unconscious conditioning and you are finally ready to be the creator of your own identity from every angle imaginable, and this will be a new and authentic identity. But because of the full moon in Cancer on the 3rd making an opposition to this Capricorn stellium, and the full moon will be hitting your 6th house of health routine and daily work, this private 12th house focus might suddenly hit a major friction point with the demands of your daily life and your physical body or your subconscious. And so maybe you find that while you're trying to process the soul, maybe a sudden emotional work emergency or a health flare up in your daily routine, or maybe some issues with like sleeping or managing your schedule could like cause burnout. And this could really force you to ground your subconscious insights into something functional and integrated seamlessly into your daily schedule. And so it may feel like that you're successfully building the internal temple, but you're suddenly forced to check if your physical body or your 6th house habits are actually safe and maintained enough to house your expanding spirit. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. Maybe you got to realize that there are some habits that you got to do in your real life if you really want to get to the root of the matter and the deepest parts of your subconscious. And the physical sensation for the first half of the month is one of retreat. And so maybe you feel a literal deep-seated desire to close your eyes and move in slow motion, almost as if your physical body is being prepared for a massive internal renovation within your 12th house, especially with the conjunction of Capricorn planets peaking from the 6th through the 10th. And so maybe you find yourself navigating a period of intense solitary work, maybe finishing a private research project, maybe a manuscript, a creative one, or at the very least, maybe you're getting clear about your psychological boundaries through spiritual practices. And another dynamic playing out this month will involve the square between the transiting Capricorn planets and Chiron transiting your 3rd house of communication, mind, and local environment, especially especially from the 11th through the 16th. And so maybe you experience a situation where a hidden 12th house secret or a subconscious fear is triggered by a difficult conversation with another person, or maybe you just have random thoughts and ideas popping up in your mind, or maybe there's just a sudden change in your immediate surroundings, really forcing you to use your mental patterns and your voice to solve a problem that has historically made you feel silenced. And no matter how this plays out, either themes surrounding how you communicate or your thought patterns will be prevalent, and they will be tied to your subconscious patterns. Maybe you realize some negative self-talk that you've been having, for example, or maybe you realize maybe a past event that has been buried in your subconscious that really does influence how you communicate and think now. So I would pay attention to that. And so as planets begin the massive shift into your first house of self, appearance, and vitality, especially later in the month, this subterranean pressure will shift into this vibrating electric presence right on the surface of your skin, particularly from the 17th through the 23rd. And the sensation will move your internal world into your eyes, your face, and your physical life force. And so it feels like a sudden surge of static electricity moving through your limbs, shifting you from the work of the spirit into the embodying of the self. And this transition may mark the moment where you start to see what your mission is during the Pluto in Aquarius era. And especially this will be prevalent as these transits conjoin with Pluto, peaking from the 19th through the 23rd. And so whether you want to reinvent your identity from a physical or emotional standpoint, it's important to really pay attention to yourself at this time. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your first house towards the end of the month, particularly the 27th, I would expect an intense all or nothing transformation in how you present yourself, your appearance, or your vitality and energy levels. This could look like a sudden but intense decision to change your look or your role in the world. This could look like an external or an internal event really triggering insights about yourself. And you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your personality to make room for a future that's actually yours. And so the specific danger for you this month is falling into a psychological abyss where you become so focused on your internal work and spiritual foundations that you end up avoiding the demands of the physical world. And because that Capricorn energy is in your 12th house of the subconscious, there is a risk of becoming a little bit too isolated or even lost in your own hidden patterns, as if you are trying to solve the mystery of your soul while ignoring the literal life you are living. And you could start treating your spiritual growth like a mission that no one else can understand. And if you're not careful, this could really turn into a stagnant or even lonely retreat for you. But also, as Mars and Pluto comes together in your first house at the end of the month, I would watch out for an identity explosion or an all or nothing urge to totally change your appearance or a role in a way that feels a little bit too aggressive. And so you might feel a sudden and intense pressure to seize control of how the world sees you, but you have to make sure you are moving from a place of power and not just from a place of reaction. However, the opportunity here is actually huge because it's a chance to totally bridge the gap between your spirit and your body. And the whole why behind this intense internal pressure is to move you away from the unconscious conditioning and get you to start consciously being. And you have this rare chance to take these deep insights from your soul and to use them as fuel for a brand new powerful physical identity. And by working through those mental wounds and the fears about your own voice, you are learning that your personal strength is a foundation that can withstand the storm of your own transformation. And January is an invitation to prove that you can handle the responsibility of your own spirit while still showing up as a visionary presence in the world. Pisces Rising, January is a massive recalibration of your place in the collective and your long-term goals that eventually folds inward into a high-voltage spiritual revamping period. And because you have that heavy Capricorn energy occupying your 11th house for the first half of the month, and this will represent your community, your networks, your friends, and your place in society, by the way, this makes the first half of the month all about structural weight within your social sphere and your contributions to the collective or to groups or to society. Honestly, the atmosphere here could feel like this high-level board meeting or a meeting of people, networks, and causes where every handshake and every promise in your network carries a tangible long-term cost, but it could also feel like you are trying to find your role within these networks where the navigation has to be completed very carefully, or maybe you feel like you have to go over some hurdles and you're trying to figure out how to do it, and you're physically registering the grit required to show up for the larger causes or groups surrounding your life, feeling that responsibility responsibility right in your bones, and it's a sign that you're done with unconscious social conformity and you're finally ready to be the creator of your own spiritual truth, no matter how that looks. But because of the full moon in Cancer on the 3rd, which will be opposing the Capricorn stellium happening, this full moon will be hitting your 5th house of creativity, joy, romance, and self-expression. And so this heavy focus on your networks and your 11th house friends could suddenly hit a friction point. So maybe you find that while you're trying to build a community monument, maybe you're trying to take care of a child or your own inner child or a romantic interest or a personal passion project in the 5th house, and this will demand a deep emotional presence that really forces you to check if your social status or maybe your place in society are actually costing you your personal joy and your creative heart. Or maybe you are questioning your role in the community based on the discovery and exploration of what does bring you joy. And so this dynamic can go in both ways. And it's like you're trying to focus on building your contribution to the collective, but you're suddenly forced to check if the foundation of your private heart and your pleasure can actually hold the weight of your goals. And so a balancing act will be needed as we kick off the month. And the physical sensation here is one of such deep density for the first half of the month. And so you might feel a literal physical tension in your shoulders, in the back of your neck, almost as if you are carrying the expectations and duties of an entire group or a social cause on your back, especially with the conjunction of Capricorn planets peaking from the 6th through the 10th. You might notice a cooling about your usual absorbent and empathetic energy as your life force is really channeled into the results-oriented work of evaluating the structure of your role in society or your friend groups. And you might find yourself finalizing a major leadership role with a professional organization, for example. Maybe you're navigating a complex community project, or at the very least, you're getting clear about your social boundaries and your long-term goals. Another dynamic this month we may see play out will involve the square between the transiting Capricorn planets and Chiron in your 2nd house of values, assets, and self-worth, peaking from January 11th through the 16th. And so you might face a situation where a social obligation, for example, or a group goal really challenges your financial security or your sense of self-worth, really triggering that old annoying wound about your right to exist, or maybe that wound around your self-worth, or wounds about what you are actually able to contribute materially and energetically to the causes that you care about. Or maybe you discover how the larger goals you are a part of are actually draining your resources in some way. It's one of those moments where you have to use your mental patterns to solve the money or the skills or the self-worth issues that scare you the most. And it's a time where you can really prove that your 2nd house value is a foundation for the rest of the pursuits that you will be taking on, especially later in the month. And as the planets begin to shift into Aquarius and your 12th house of the subconscious and spirituality later in the month, particularly from the 17th to the 23rd, that external social pressure will shift into a vibrating electric hum behind your eyes and in your crown chakra. It may feel like a sudden surge of static electricity moving through your mind's eye, shifting the focus from the work of the group to the deep dive into the void, as well as the internal transformations of the spirit. And so this transition marks a moment where your 11th house social focus really turns into a focus of the visionary internal work of the 12th house, especially as these planets conjoin with Pluto, particularly from the 19th to the 23rd, which could give you a hint into what Pluto in Aquarius may look like for you in general. And so this could look like sudden mental downloads that are actually needed to help you progress in life and break stagnation. Or it could also look like finally addressing the subconscious beliefs that you didn't realize existed. Or it could simply look like retreating into isolation to transmutate any heaviness that you've recently dealt with. And then finally, as Mars and Pluto come together in your 12th house towards the end of the month, particularly the 27th, I would expect a radical all or nothing transformation in your private life and your subconscious. And so this could look like a decision to finally end a secret habit or self-sabotaging mental pattern that has held you back, really moving away from a version of your spiritual life that felt safe but was actually just restrictive. Or this could look like a sudden event, whether internal or external, really bringing thoughts to the surface that you didn't even know existed. And you're basically clearing out any dead weight from your soul to make room for a future that's actually liberated. And the specific thing to watch out for this month is becoming so weighed down by the social duties and expectations of society or the community that you end up losing your own creative spark. And because this Capricorn energy is so heavy in your 11th house of networks and goals, there is a risk of becoming a little bit too focused on being the reliable one for the cause or the group, which could leave you feeling like you are just a part of a machine rather than an individual actually contributing something worthy in it. And you might also start treating your friendships or your social goals like a serious administrative task to be managed. And if you're not careful, that results-oriented focus could lead to a feeling of being emotionally burnt out or disconnected from your own joy. But I would also watch out for the Mars-Pluto conjunction in your 12th house at the end of the month, as this carries a little bit of a risk of a spiritual crisis or maybe a sudden urge to retreat from the world entirely to deal with a hidden pattern or secret fear. And if you're not careful, this high-voltage energy could really make you feel like you have to cut yourself off from everybody just to find your own truth. However, the opportunity here is actually massive because it is a chance to totally overhaul the way you contribute to the world. And the whole why behind this intense social pressure is to move you away from the unconscious conformity and to get you to start, or at the very least revise, a visionary contribution that is yours. And you have this rare chance to take your place in society and use it as a foundation for a brand new and authentic spiritual mission. And January is your invitation to prove that you can be both a leader in your community and a master of your own soul. And you can really use your social power or your drive at the very least to feel the future that is actually free and honest and true to you. Aries Suns, on January 2nd, Chiron goes direct in your sign, which helps stabilize your confidence and your ability to start new things. And during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, followed by the continued Capricorn stellium through the 19th, your energy is funneled into a heavy, serious workload. The positive is that your vitality gains a quality of grit. You find that you have the stamina to finish long-term projects that could usually bore you. But the negatives that could take place this month are especially potent between the 11th and 13th, because you could feel irritable and stuck as the environment will demand slow, methodical progress rather than just speed. And then as the sun moves into Aquarius on the 19th and Neptune re-enters Aries on the 26th, your identity will shift towards innovation. And by the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, your energy levels will be super high at this time, but you risk being overly aggressive or acting on a whim, which could disrupt the stability you built earlier in the month. And so focus on being the person who handles the difficult logistics early so that you have the freedom to try new ideas by the end of the month. Taurus Suns, the month starts with the supportive period during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th and the wider Capricorn stellium through the 19th. And so the positive is that your energy and vitality is at its best here, and you'll find it easy to build a solid routine and manage your physical resources. However, on the 9th and 10th, your identity faces friction as the Capricorn planets oppose Jupiter. And so the negative is that you could become too stubborn or resistant to necessary changes, sticking to a plan that isn't working because it feels safe. And as the sun enters Aquarius on the 19th, followed by the Venus-Pluto conjunction, your energy moves towards modernization. And so this faster pace can make you feel internally scattered or anxious, and you risk becoming pressured to change your habits so quickly, which can cause you to shut down or refuse to cooperate with others. And so this month you need to lean into your talents for hard work early on, but keep your schedule flexible enough to handle the workflow updates by the end of the month. Gemini Sun, your identity begins the month with an intense focus as Mercury enters Capricorn on the 1st. And so the positive is that throughout the Capricorn stellium until the 19th, you gain intense mental focus, making it easier to solve logistical problems and organize your work. But the rough side of this month could be during the Mercury-Jupiter opposition on the 14th. So you could feel bored or restricted by the demands for rules, which could make you cynical about your daily duties. And then as the sun and Mercury enter Aquarius on the 19th and 20th, your vitality receives a major boost. letting you solve old problems with clever new ideas. And then during the Sun-Mercury-Pluto meeting between the 21st and 23rd, you could gain deep insights, but you risk being too detached, focusing so much on the logic of a situation that you forget the practical needs of the people who are around you. And so this month, you should fix the logistical puzzles of your life early in the month so you have the mental space to be innovative by the end of the month. Cancer Suns, the full moon in your sign on the 3rd will bring a peak of awareness regarding your personal needs. The positive is that you gain a lot of practical toughness through the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th and the wider Capricorn stellium through the 19th, giving you the grit to handle difficult tasks. The negative is that on the 14th, during the Mercury-Jupiter opposition, you could feel isolated or unsupported as the world prioritizes logic over gut feelings. And the new moon in Capricorn on the 18th will act as a reset for your personal goals. And once the sun enters Aquarius on the 19th, your vitality will become more objective, letting you look at life without getting overwhelmed. And then by the Mars-Pluto meeting on the 27th, you may feel a powerful surge of change, but you risk feeling disconnected as the shift into detached energy leaves you feeling like an outsider in your own life. And so this month is a time to build a strong practical foundation for yourself, especially early in the month, so you don't feel like you're consistently reacting to other people's needs. Leo Sun, your identity starts the month focused on mastering the mundane during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th. And the positive is that your identity is built on reliability, which builds professional respect and long-term security. The negative is that you could feel ignored or unappreciated early in the month, as doing the behind-the-scenes work can feel like a blow to your ego. On the 19th, the sun will move into Aquarius, followed by the Sun-Pluto conjunction from the 21st to the 23rd. And so the positive is that your vitality shifts towards reinvention, really helping you find clever ways to stand out. However, by the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, you might experience a power struggle or an urge to act too independently, and you risk causing unnecessary conflict with those around you if you try to force your personal vision onto a group effort. And so work on the small practical details early in the month so that you have the authority and the energy to lead by the end of the month. Virgo Suns, you are in a state of peak efficiency during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th and the broader Capricorn stellium through the 19th. The positive is that this is the best time to refine your systems and to get ahead of your to-do list. And the Mercury-Mars conjunction on the 17th and 18th provides a peak window for productivity, especially for you. And the negative is that you risk becoming too critical of yourself or others during the heavy Capricorn transits. But as Mercury enters Aquarius on the 20th, your identity shifts towards mental experimentation, letting you find innovative shortcuts for whatever systems you're trying to refine in your life. However, the Mercury-Pluto activation from the 21st to the 23rd could trigger some mental overstimulation on your end, where you try to fix too many things at once and end up feeling too scattered or anxious about your overall progress. And so trust that your talent for organization early on can help you, but don't let the pursuit of perfection stop you from trying a more innovative approach, especially later in the month. Libra Suns, in early January, your vitality will face a test of grit during the triple conjunction between the 6th and the 9th. And the positive is that you are developing personal integrity by standing your ground rather than just trying to please everybody or find harmony in your life. And the negative is that the heavy workload and logistics during the 19th can feel like a constant weight, making you feel like you've lost your sense of fun. And things will start to feel lighter again once Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, followed by the sun entering Aquarius on the 19th. And so the positive is that you gain a shot of adrenaline that helps you move towards projects that feel more innovative and free. And by the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, you could find a new way to connect to others in your life, but you risk becoming too unpredictable or acting with a lack of tact, which can disrupt your internal balance. And so focus on the practical results in whatever you do early in the month so that you have the internal strength to be yourself by the end of the month. Scorpio Suns, you are incredibly focused and strategic during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, and the positive is that you'll have the stamina to build projects that are meant to last, and your ability to manage power will be at its peak. But the negative is that early in the month, you could become obsessed with control, which could suppress your natural intuition and lead to a bit of internal tension. But the real transformation occurs when the Sun enters Aquarius on the 19th, followed by the Pluto conjunctions from the 21st to the 27th. And so the positive is that your vitality could become unstoppable, giving you the courage to modernize your life and remove old habits that no longer serve you. But the negative is that this energy could be volatile. Your all or nothing drive during the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th could lead to unnecessary conflict or a destructive approach towards the systems that you have built. And so channel this intense energy into one specific practical goal to avoid getting caught in unnecessary power struggles with others throughout the month, and that is the key to making January the best it can be. Sagittarius Suns, your vitality begins the month with a focus on practicality as Mercury enters Capricorn on the 1st. The positives are that you will gain stamina to turn your big ideas into real tangible steps, especially during this Capricorn stellium. But the negative is that you could feel trapped or restricted by the rules and details, especially during the Mercury-Jupiter opposition on the 14th, which could drain your optimism. And once the Sun and Mercury enters Aquarius on the 19th and 20th, your identity will feel a huge sense of freedom. And on the 26th, Neptune will re-enter Aries, giving your life force a shot of adrenaline. The positive is that you gain the bravery to start new projects with a fresh perspective, but the negative is that you risk acting on a whim as Neptune and Mars shift signs, losing touch with the practical work you did earlier and leading to a half-baked result. And so focus on the boring logistical details early in the month so that your big plans actually have the foundations that they need to succeed later. Capricorn Suns, this is the month of total self-mastery, especially during your sun season and the new moon on the 18th. The positive is that you are at your most determined during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, and you have the grit to build something lasting in whatever area of life you're trying to build. But the negative is that you risk overextending yourself early in the month, which could lead to physical burnout or the feeling that you must handle every responsibility alone. And then as the inner planets move into Aquarius starting the 19th, your vitality will shift towards innovation. And the positive is that you could find smarter, more collaborative ways to run your life. But the negative is that during the Mars-Pluto meeting on the 27th, you could create or feel this loss of structure or want to throw away the old rules a little bit too quickly, which could create temporary chaos in your schedule. And so you have the stamina to reach your goals this month, but make sure the mountain you're climbing is actually worth the effort. Aquarius Suns, the first half of the month could feel like a waiting room while the Capricorn stellium through the 19th keeps your focus on the serious duties of life. The positive is that early January is a great time for preparation, letting you get your logistics sorted, but the negative is that you may feel stifled or invisible, as being forced into serious routine could feel like a cage for your spirit. But once your birthday month starts on the 19th, your vitality receives a major power up. During the Sun-Pluto conjunction from the 21st to the 23rd, you'll feel a high voltage realization about your own power. By the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, though, your energy will be intense, but you risk an unpredictable ego, potentially making reckless decisions just to prove your independence or disrupt the status quo without a clear plan. And so use the early weeks to get the logistics sorted so that you can execute your big innovative ideas with total authority later. Pisces Sun, early January brings a focus on grounding your energy as the Capricorn stellium moves through. The positive is that you gain practical grounding during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, making it easier to turn your ideas into real action. But the negative is that you may feel drained by real life logistics early on, which could lead you to feeling uninspired and cause you to lose your creative spark. But the biggest shift will happen on the 26th when Neptune enters Aries, and the positive is that your vitality shifts into a brave, active state, really giving you the adrenaline to chase your own goals, especially at this time. But the negative is that as your energy moves into Aquarius and Aries late in the month, you could risk acting out of exhaustion or confusion if you don't pace yourself and set clear, practical boundaries for your energy. And so set clear, practical rules for your schedule early in the month so that the energy doesn't leak away into everybody else's problems, especially at the end of the month. Aries moons on January 2nd, Chiron goes direct in your sign, helping you stabilize your internal confidence. The positive is that during the new moon in Capricorn on the 18th, your temperament becomes more disciplined and you could find safety in following a practical plan. But the negative is that around the full moon in Cancer on the 3rd, you could experience a frustrating tug of war between your need to move fast and a demand for more internally focused duties. And then by the end of the month, as Mars and Pluto move through Aquarius and conjoin on the 27th, your energy levels will spike. And the positive is an urge to act on your instincts and to let your emotions go free, but the negative is the risk of becoming reckless with your feelings or acting out of a sudden desire for freedom without thinking of the long-term consequences for your stability. And so stick to a predictable daily schedule to help your quick-moving temperament from feeling overwhelmed by stress. Taurus moons, the full moon in Cancer on the 3rd and the triple conjunction between the 6th and the 9th in Capricorn offers a very stable and supportive emotional environment for you. The positive is that you can find a deep sense of safety in results-oriented work, and the internal mood remains calm as you organize your life during the new moon on the 18th. The negative is that the mechanical pitfall for you early on is emotional rigidity, where you could refuse to make necessary changes in your life as you want to feel safe, and sometimes safety is challenged by movement. And then as the planets move into Aquarius later in the month, especially from the 19th to the 27th, the pace of your inner world will speed up. The positive is that you could find a new innovative way to manage your stress, but the negative is that you could become destabilized or anxious by sudden changes to your environment, really leading to a stubborn refusal to adapt to a better way of doing things. And so focus on the practical work that makes your internal self feel safe and secure early on so that you can open yourself up to new habits and new ways of doing things by the end of January. Gemini moons, your internal world will gain focus as Mercury enters Capricorn on the 1st. And the positive is that during the Capricorn stellium for the first half of the month, you'll find it easy to anchor your mind and turn scattered thoughts into a checklist. The negative side is that especially during the Mercury-Jupiter opposition on the 14th, you could feel a mental heaviness or boredom with the demand for logistics. And by the time Mercury and the Sun meet Pluto in Aquarius from the 19th to the 23rd, your temperament receives a shot of adrenaline. The positive is that you gain brilliant insights into your own habits, but the negative is that late in the month, you risk becoming too detached, focused a little bit too much on the logic of your feelings that you stop actually processing them, which can lead to feeling cold or disconnected from yourself. And so use your talent for logic to fix the small logistical problems in your life early in the month so that you have the mental space for bigger ideas later in the month. Cancer moon, the full moon in your sign on the 3rd is a peak of self-awareness. And the positive is that by the new moon in Capricorn on the 18th, your temperament will shift towards practical action, really helping you create resilient internal environments for yourself. But the negative is that during the Capricorn stellium from the 6th to the 19th, you could feel a little bit moody or overwhelmed as the world demands results over your comfort. And then on January 14th, the Mercury-Jupiter opposition could make you feel isolated as logic is prioritized over your gut. And then later in the month, during the Aquarius transits, particularly from the 19th to the 27th, the positive is a more objective view of your stress. You can really become emotionally self-aware at this time. But the negative is that you could feel alienated or like you don't fit in, which could drain your emotional energy and cause you to shut down. And so set clear, practical rules for your personal time this month to ensure you aren't taking on the emotional stress of everybody else around you. Leo moons, the month begins with your temperament focused on private duty during the full moon in Cancer on the 3rd. The positive is that during the Capricorn stellium through the 19th, you learn to value internal stability over external praise. The new moon on the 18th will also help you commit to a structured routine. But the negative is that in the first half of the month, you may feel emotionally suppressed, as the focus on duty and chores can cool your expressive spark a little bit. And then later in the month, as the planets meet with Pluto and Aquarius, particularly from the 21st to the 27th, the positive is a sense of innovative power, but the negative is that you risk an identity crisis or erratic behavior if you aren't being acknowledged, which could lead to internal tension as you try to force people to notice your efforts, or you try to force yourself to notice your efforts as well. It could be more about yourself. And so focus on the work of self-care now so that you have a solid foundation that lets you feel confident even when you're working behind the scenes. Virgo moons, your temperament is in a state of peak efficiency during the Capricorn stellium, particularly from the 1st to the 19th. And the positive is that this supports your need for order, letting you organize your internal landscape with precision. The negative is that early in the month, you could suffer from hypercriticism, really increasing your own anxiety by focusing on the perfect ways to handle things. On the 18th, the new moon, though, will give you a clean slate. And as Mercury moves into Aquarius on the 20th, the positive is that you gain a sense of mental bravery and you can find innovative ways to manage stress. But the negative is that during the Mercury-Pluto activation from the 21st to the 23rd, you do risk overstimulation, trying to fix too many internal habits at once and end up feeling too scattered or losing your calm. And so trust your emotional instincts at this time, but remember that a good enough routine is better than one that causes you constant stress, and that can really help take you so far throughout this month. Libra moon, in early January, your temperament faces a test of grit, while the Capricorn stellium through the 19th puts pressure on your moon sign. And so the positive is that you are developing internal integrity by finding safety in your own disciplined boundaries. But the negative is that the mechanical pressure of early January can feel like a constant weight, making you feel like your harmony is being forced for the sake of duty. And then later in the month, as Venus and the Sun enter Aquarius from the 17th to the 19th, the positive is a sense of liberation, allowing you to value your own unique ideas. But the negative is that during the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, the danger is a little bit of unpredictability, where you can search for freedom, but you could also accidentally disrupt your own internal balance or cause social friction at this time. And so prioritize your own practical needs first this month to ensure you have the internal strength to maintain your balance with others as the month concludes. Scorpio moons, your temperament is focused and strategically strong this month. The full moon in Cancer on the 3rd will help you connect to a nurturing side of your intensity. The positive this month is that the new moon in Capricorn on the 18th will help you channel your need for transformation into results-oriented action. But the negative this month is that during the Capricorn stellium early in the month, you could become obsessed with internal control, leading to a high internal sense of pressure. And as the planets meet with Pluto and Aquarius from the 19th to the 27th particularly, the positive for this transit is a powerful surge of internal honesty, but the negative is that your drive for transformation could become a little bit volatile, leading to internal power struggles or a destructive mood that could alienate your sense of safety or push you to make impulsive nonlinear changes in your life. And so channel your powerful internal drive into one specific practical habit to avoid feeling overwhelmed by your own intensity. Sagittarius moons. Early January provides your temperament with the practical bones as the Capricorn stellium continues. The positive for this month is that you can turn your visions for safety into real steps and practical solutions. But the negative is that especially around the 14th, you could feel internally restricted by the demands for rules, which can drain your optimism and make your duties feel a little bit like a cage. And then by late month, as Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd and Neptune re-enters Aries on the 26th, your internal world becomes active and brave. And so the positive is that you can gain the adrenaline to start new projects at this time. But the negative is that you risk emotional impulsivity, getting so excited by a new internal insight that you lose touch with the practical needs that you have, leading to exhaustion or maybe half-baked results within your personal life or internal landscape. And so handle the boring logistical details of your life early in the month so that the big picture goals that you actually have can stand solid later on as we conclude January. Capricorn Moon. This is a month for personal self-mastery, especially during the Capricorn stellium through the 19th and the new moon in your sign on the 18th. The positive for this month is that you are at your most determined and find safety in being the architect of your own world. But the negative for the month is taking on too much responsibility early in the month, which could lead to emotional burnout, especially if you feel like you must handle everything alone. And the sensitive energy of the full moon on the 3rd in Cancer can feel like a direct challenge to your self-control. Later in the month, though, the positive is that you can learn to find security in creating new innovative systems for your life that can help you emotionally regulate. But the negative is that you might feel a loss of structure or want to throw away your old rules a little bit too quickly, potentially making you feel vulnerable or off balance by the month's end. And so you have the stamina to reach your goals this month, but make sure you are taking care of your physical needs along the way to avoid the burnout. Aquarius moons. January is a time of preparation while the focus is on Capricorn, and the positive is that this allows for disciplined preparation, letting you get your internal logistics sorted. You can really sort through your emotions this life on an objective level. But the negative is that your inner world could feel a little bit stifled or invisible, and the serious energy through the 19th can feel like a cage for your spirit. But once planets move into your moon sign and meet with Pluto, particularly from the 19th to the 27th, your temperament will receive a major power up. And the positive of this is a high voltage realization of your own power to change your life, or maybe emotional realizations that can help you to truly heal. But the negative is that with the Mars-Pluto conjunction in your sign on the 27th, the danger is an unpredictable ego where your drive for change can become so intense that you could act without thinking, or you could create temporary chaos in your emotional life as you adjust to these new changes, even though that you are built for them because of all that's going on in Aquarius. And so get your internal logistics sorted early in the month so that you have the total freedom to execute your big innovative ideas with confidence later in the month. Capricorn Moon. Early January could bring grounding energy as the Capricorn stellium moves through. And the positive for this stellium is that you could find practical discipline to protect your emotional nature, especially during the new moon on the 18th. This is very good for guarding your heart and really protecting it so that it can heal and flourish. But the negative is that the demand for logistics and chores or work a little bit early in the month can make your temperament feel a little bit heavy or uninspired, and you could feel overwhelmed by the physical weight of your duties. But then later in the month, as Neptune re-enters Aries on the 26th, your temperament will move from a little bit more passive to active. And the positive is that you could gain the adrenaline to take charge of your well-being. But the negative that you need to watch out for is as the energy moves into Aries and Aquarius later in the month, the faster energy could become a little bit jarring, which could lead to exhaustion or burnout or emotional confusion if you don't set clear, practical boundaries for yourself, which that's what the early month is calling you to do. And so set these few practical rules for your daily schedule early in the month to ensure that your energy isn't being drained by everybody else's problems later in the month. Aries Mercury, your mental patterns are naturally very forward moving and instinctual, but as Mercury enters Capricorn on the 1st, your thoughts could be forced into a more stoic or results oriented framework. And the mechanic here is one of structural discipline. So you may be shifting from thinking on your feet to thinking for the long term, and you'll find yourself less interested in the heat of the moment and more focused on the mechanics of a plan that can actually survive the test of time. And so when Mercury squares Chiron on the 16th, you could encounter a mental test of grit where you feel a temporary sting of inadequacy regarding your technical knowledge or your right to lead a conversation or your thoughts. And this isn't a sign to retreat, but an invitation to refine your communication with thoughtful application. And then as Mercury moves into Aquarius and conjoins with Pluto from the 21st to the 23rd, your mental engine may get a shot of adrenaline. And so your insights could become revolutionary, maybe a little bit non-linear. And beyond simply communicating ideas, you are using your intellect as a tool for systematic transformation, really finding clever outside of the box solutions to the very structural problems that you identified earlier in the month. Natal Mercury in Taurus, your mind is steady, methodical, and deeply grounded in tangible reality. And so the Capricorn transits from the 1st to the 19th may feel like home turf for you, as it really reinforces your natural desire for a solid, undeniable foundation of facts. And your mental patterns are exceptionally clear right now, really focusing on logistics, long-term viability, and the practical how-to of your ambitions. However, the opposition to Jupiter in Cancer from Mercury on the 14th really creates a friction point between your detailed logic and a bigger, more intuitive gut feeling. And so you may find yourself arguing for the math or the logistics of a situation while your heart is pulling you towards emotional security. But the breakthrough really happens this month when Mercury enters Aquarius on the 20th. And so your communication style could undergo this modernization, if that makes sense. And as Mercury conjoins with Pluto from the 21st to the 23rd, you'll really experience a high voltage realization about your personal values or how you manage information. And instead of staying in stubborn mental loops, you are moving towards a more detached outside point of view of any situation that allows you to see how your steady mind can actually innovate the systems that you inhabit. Gemini Mercury, your mental patterns are usually clever, investigative, and fueled by a constant need for variety. And so when your ruler enters Capricorn on the 1st, your thoughts may undergo a massive tonal shift towards the stoic and results-oriented nature of Capricorn. And the mechanic here is one of mental containment. So you are being asked to stop the scattered optimism and to start taking responsibility for your words and your ideas. And the Mercury-Mars conjunction in Capricorn on the 17th to the 18th is your peak mental performance window, because you'll have the drive, the stamina, and the sharp critical eye needed to organize complex thoughts into actionable reality. And when Mercury enters Aquarius on the 20th, your mind may feel unlocked, and this transit is really one of sudden insight. And as Mercury conjoins with Pluto from the 21st to the 23rd, your thoughts may move from the administrative, ideas to the transformative ones, and you'll find yourself really obsessed with the objective truth and the future of social systems in some way, however that applies in your life. And rather than simply collecting data, you are becoming the creator of the future, really using your intellect to bridge the gap between the old world and the new world. Cancer Mercury, your mind is very intuitive, empathetic, and often driven by passion and understanding, and you are very good at knowing the intuitive layout of a situation. And January's Capricorn energy, particularly from the 1st to the 19th, could act as a necessary pressure cooker for your mental patterns, really demanding that you move away from moodiness and more towards mental discipline and seeing both sides of the situation. You may also be communicating to a lot of people at this time, and you are being asked to find a realistic schedule for your intuitive hits. And the full moon in your sign on the 3rd could also bring a sudden emotional realization that forces you to communicate your need for safety more clearly than ever before. And during the Mercury-Jupiter opposition on the 14th, maybe you feel a little bit mentally inflated. Maybe you can overpromise on a technical level because you feel like you can do something, but you really need to evaluate the viability of something before you actually take action. And it's a time to really check the fine print of your feelings. And then as Mercury Mercury enters Aquarius on the 20th, your mental insights could become a lot more detached and investigative, and you are learning to use your empathy as a tool for systematic change, moving beyond its use as a way to feel safe. And then the Pluto activation with Mercury from the 21st to the 23rd will help you communicate your deep intuitive truths in a way that is both useful and revolutionary, proving that your gut feelings have a place in the architectural redesign of your life. Leo Mercury, your mental patterns are very expressive, radiant, and creative. They kind of just flow. They're part of who you are. But the heavy Capricorn stellium early in the month may demand a more stoic and results-oriented communication style. And you are being called to tap into your determination and prove your integrity through practical mental application rather than just lighting up a room. And then the Mercury-Mars conjunction on the 18th could give you an incredible sense of mental authority. You could speak with a power that is both grounded and finalized. It's very set in stone. However, for you, the real power up for your intellect will happen when Mercury enters Aquarius on the 20th, which is opposite your sign. And so your mental insights are now filtered through the lens of the other and the collective. So you could experience high voltage realizations about social systems or relationship dynamics, or just maybe you see the other side of the coin in whatever it is that you're analyzing. And this will make your thoughts very balanced. And then the Mercury-Pluto conjunction from the 21st to the 23rd may allow you to communicate with a level of depth and influence that you haven't felt in a long time. And so you are learning to value the unconventional insight over the standard creative output. And you can find this month that your mental light is most useful when it illuminates the future for everybody and yourself. Virgo Mercury, you are in your element during the first half of January because as a Virgo Mercury, your mind is detailed, analytical, and is very geared towards thoughtful application. So the Capricorn energy from the 1st to the 19th could provide a supportive structural environment where your mental patterns can achieve maximum efficiency, and you have the ability to see the structure of any problem and organize a solution that will last. With the Mercury-Mars conjunction from the 17th to the 18th, this could be a high-octane moment for your mind, so maybe you clear out years of mental or administrative clutter in a single burst of focused drive. However, the square to Chiron from Mercury on the 16th could trigger a wound of the pioneer, the wound of the starter, where you feel critical of your own ideas because you don't feel confident enough to start a new project. And so use your intellect to solve the fear rather than avoiding it. And when Mercury enters Aquarius on the 20th, your thoughts may shift from the rules to the system, and you will begin to find clever, nonlinear solutions to problems that were too heavy for the Capricorn logic, and you are proving your ability through a blend of meticulous detail and innovation. Libra Mercury, your mind is very balanced, fair, and it understands the world through the lens of others. So in January, the Capricorn transits from the 1st to the 19th could create a little bit of a friction point, really forcing your mental patterns to become more stoic and results-oriented. You may feel a pressure to be final in your communications when you'd rather be fair. Maybe you feel rushed in some way in whatever area of life is applicable. And so the mechanic here is really one of mental grit, and you are learning to communicate with a level of responsibility that transcends social harmony. And then the Mercury-Jupiter opposition on the 14th could highlight a disagreement where you are focused on the technical specifics while someone else is focused on the big picture and emotional meaning. So watch out for that as well. And the release could come on the 20th when Mercury enters Aquarius, your fellow air sign. So your thoughts return to a more social or collaborative space, one that's more airy and flexible with a new edge of objective detachment. And so the Mercury-Pluto conjunction on the 21st to the 23rd will offer such a deep transformation of your mental insights. Maybe you realize that your true balance really transcends simply pleasing everybody or simply doing what you think you have to do, and you may be more sharper in your pursuit of the truth by the end of the month. Scorpio Mercury, your mental patterns are very deep, investigative, and powerful. And so early January's Capricorn energy from the 1st to the 19th may act as a grounded container or vessel for your intensity, really allowing you to use your detective mind to build tangible structures of influence in whatever life is resonant. And you are focusing on the mechanics of power and the how of your long-term legacy and whatever it is that you're trying to build. It could just be within yourself, or it could be something that you're trying to build within the world. And then the Mercury-Mars Mars conjunction on the 18th could give your communication a very sharp and disciplined and unstoppable force. So you do need to watch, your tongue at this time, but also if you need to speak with power, speak with that at that time. However, the real shift could occur when Mercury enters Aquarius on the 20th and activates your ruler of Pluto. And so this is a massive power up, and you move from the investigative energy to the revolutionary energy. And as Mercury conjoins with Pluto from the 21st to the 23rd, you could experience a sudden high voltage insight into the very systems of society or the systems that rule your life. And you are able to communicate complex systematic truths in a way that are both useful and final at this time. And this month you are really learning to use your mental power to challenge the intellectual status quo and really prove that your ability to see into the dark is what allows you to build a better future. Sagittarius Mercury, your mental patterns are naturally expansive and eager for new experience, but Mercury's move into Capricorn on the 1st could act as a mental reality check. So you are being asked to shift from a what if mindset to a how to do this mindset. And so this transit may demand mental discipline and a focus on the mechanics of your plans or what it is you're trying to do. And during the Mercury-Jupiter opposition on the 14th, you could struggle with mental inflation, where you want to expand through big ideas, but you are being held back by the fine print of reality in some way. And it's a time to ground your optimism in a realistic schedule. And then once Mercury enters Aquarius on the 20th, your thoughts will regain their freedom, but with a much sharper and more detached focus. And then the Pluto activation from Mercury from the 21st to the 23rd will provide a shot of adrenaline to your insights, really allowing you to see the big picture of the future through a high voltage, innovative lens. And instead of simply dreaming of the new horizons, you are now communicating the redesign of your entire life, or you're thinking of it with a sense of purpose and meaning that can influence your life in such big ways. Capricorn Mercury, this could be a foundational month for your mind, because with Mercury in your sign from the 1st to the 19th, your mental patterns are at their most potent and disciplined, and you have the mental insight to see exactly what needs to be fixed, and you have the drive to do it at this time. And you will be so practical at this time. You are looking for solid, undeniable foundations to build upon, and if there's any time to find it, it is this month. However, the square to Chiron from Mercury on the 16th could bring a temporary moment of mental self-doubt, maybe a fear that you don't know how to start something new or how to build off of your ideas. Maybe that's a focus as well. And so use your natural determination to work through this wound of starting and just go for it, whatever it is, even if you don't think you're ready. And as Mercury leaves your sign and enters Aquarius on the 20th, your mental focus will shift from the hierarchy to, the application. And you are learning that the systems you built are only going to work if they are useful for the future. And then the Mercury-Pluto conjunction from the 21st to the 23rd will represent a massive explosion or evolution of your thoughts. And so you are learning to hand off the rules of the game logic to embrace a more innovative system-shaking power. And this is a major month for you to really evolve how you approach thinking and communication. Aquarius Mercury, the first half of the month may be your mental preparatory phase, as the Capricorn stellium forces you to ground your innovative ideas in heavy administrative realities, and you are learning the mechanics of the very systems you want to change in some way. But when Mercury enters your sign on the 20th, your mind will become the center of the astrological storm. There's going to be a whole stellium in Aquarius, and so your mental patterns are no longer linear. They're going to be boundary pushing, maybe even clever. Write down any good ideas you have, especially after the 20th. And then as Mercury conjoins with Pluto in your sign from the 21st to the 23rd, your identity and mental insights could undergo a total redesign. And this is a massive power up that allows you to see things from a detached outside point of view with such clarity. And so you will experience sudden insights that can change your entire worldview overnight. And you are moving from the role of the outsider or the observer to the one of the builder. And you can use your mental power to really innovate both your own life and society around you. Just don't let your head get lost in the clouds, but also don't let the sudden insights overwhelm you. Pisces Mercury, your mind is naturally an energetic sponge. You're very intuitive, empathetic, and I don't care if people say you're not smart. You guys are connected to a source that can offer you so much wisdom. And so in early January, the Capricorn energy from the 1st to the 19th could provide a much needed mental structure to your thoughts. And it really forces your mental patterns into a more results-oriented framework, really helping you translate your vast creative insights into actionable steps. And the mechanic here is one of grounding. You are really learning that your intuition is a powerful tool when it's backed up by a realistic plan. And then the full moon in Cancer on the 3rd could also bring a sudden aha moment to you regarding your sense of home or your safety, or it could really ground your thoughts if you felt a little bit scattered earlier, especially in December. And as Mercury moves into Aquarius, your thoughts will become more detached and investigative, and you are learning to see your emotional patterns from an objective, big picture perspective. Then with the Mercury-Pluto conjunction from the 21st to the 23rd, this will offer such a deep transformation of your mental landscape, and you are gaining the power to communicate your visionary dreams in a way that is useful and system shaking. Beyond simply dreaming in the clouds, you are now bringing a high voltage intelligence to redesign your world. You just need to make sure that the thoughts that you receive are put into tangible form so that you can understand what they're trying to tell you. Aries Venus on January 2nd, as Chiron goes direct in your sign, you gain the practical confidence to move forward with your own goals. During the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, your feelings are channeled into a serious and results-oriented mindset. And so on the positive side, this environment helps you to turn your impulsive energy into a sustainable long-term plan for either your finances, your creativity, your relationships, your projects, and you learn the value of grit and finishing what you start. On the negative side, though, this pressure from the 11th to the 13th can feel very restrictive, leading to irritability or the urge to quit because things aren't moving fast enough. And as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, followed by its meeting with Pluto on the 19th, your values become a little bit more innovative, but you risk becoming too detached from what it is that you're pursuing. And by the time Mars and Pluto meet on the 27th, you'll feel a strong drive to make big changes, but you must be careful to not act recklessly and destroy the progress you made earlier in the month. And so focus on completing the small, boring tasks early in the month so that your big risks have a solid foundation to stand on later in the month. Taurus Venus, the month starts with a very supportive environment during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, which could help you see tangible results in pursuing the things that you are very passionate about. And so on the positive side, you could find meaning in being productive and managing your assets or your relationships or your creativity with a steady hand. And you'll feel most successful when you can see your projects or what you're pursuing growing through your efforts. And on the negative side, the tension on the 9th and 10th will force you to ask if your material success is actually making you feel secure, and you might become too stubborn or refuse to change a plan that is clearly outdated. But as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, followed by its meeting with Pluto on the 19th, the pace of your life will speed up, which can make you feel internally scattered, and you may realize that your current values need a major update, but the sudden demand for innovation could feel uncomfortable and stressful for your grounded nature. And so secure what it is that you want to go after, whether it's finance or your gains early in the month, but leave a little room in your schedule for technical updates by the final week of January. Gemini Venus, as Mercury enters Capricorn on the 1st, your values are funneled into a serious and results-oriented mindset. And so on the positive side, through the triple conjunction of Capricorn planets from the 6th to the 9th, you will gain intense focus on the logistics of your life. You could find success in turning scattered ideas into a practical checklist that will actually help you get results. On the negative side of this month, though, the friction on the 14th could make you feel a little bit bored or restricted by the demands for the boring rules and the duties of your life. And so you risk becoming cynical about your commitments if they don't offer enough variety. And And then as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, your feelings will receive a major boost. So will your passions, which can help you see the big picture of your life. And during the Venus-Pluto meeting on the 19th, you could gain deep insights that change your social circle, maybe your relationships. However, you must be careful not to become so detached from the human side of your life that you seem cold or dismissive to the people around you. And so this is the month to fix the logistical fine print of your projects and your passions and your relationships early in the month so that you have the mental freedom to be innovative later in the month. Cancer Venus, the full moon on the 3rd will highlight your personal values and your self-worth. And so on the positive side, you could gain a lot of practical toughness during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, really ensuring that your feelings are protected by a solid discipline structure. And you could learn to handle difficult social tasks this month with grit. On the negative side of the month, though, you could face some heavy resistance through the 13th as the world will demand results and status over your personal comfort. It might feel that your passions or maybe even your romance in some cases could be pushed to the side. On the 14th as well, you could feel unsupported or overwhelmed by the heavy workload that you have to do, leading to defensiveness or maybe this urge to shut down. Maybe you feel like throwing in the towel at this time. But as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, you are pushed to look at your needs more objectively, which can feel alienating, but it is the perfect time to make progress because by the Venus-Pluto meeting on the 19th, you will feel a powerful urge to change your life, but you must ensure that you aren't acting out of a fear-based need for security that no longer exists and potentially undermine your growth because you have such potential to grow this month and you can build practical daily routines that protect your personal time early in the month so that you don't burn out while trying to take care of everybody else, especially with the changes coming later in the month. Leo Venus, during the heavy environment of the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, you could find purpose in mastering your craft. On the positive side, you're learning that your creative spark is most effective when it is backed by discipline and a sense of duty. And you find meaning in handling your responsibilities with integrity. But on the negative side, you could feel ignored or unappreciated early in the month if your hard work happens behind the scenes and doesn't get immediate praise or you don't see the immediate results yourself. It could be more of an internal thing as well. And this can drain your enthusiasm and make your work feel like a burden. And as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, the focus will shift to the people around you, which can trigger an identity crisis if you don't have the self-worth or the self-confidence to stand tall in whatever happens during this month. And then during the Venus-Pluto meeting on the 19th, you could feel an intense drive to make sweeping changes to your social role or maybe even your connections and how you express your passions. And while this can lead to growth, you do risk in getting in power struggles if you try to force your vision on others without listening to their input. And so focus on the quality of your work now so that you have the unshakable authority to lead more visibly with projects and your passions by the end of the month. Virgo Venus, your detailed values are matched with the results-oriented framework followed by an experimental phase. Through the Capricorn stellium until the 19th, the transits favor your aesthetics and your ability to be useful in love. The positive is that you find meaning in being thoughtful and efficient, especially during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th. The negative is that you could risk becoming too critical of your own worth or maybe even a partner's efforts in some cases, which could cause high stress. And as Venus moves into Aquarius on the 17th, you gain the ability to find innovative shortcuts to manage your daily life. However, as Venus meets with Pluto on the 19th, you do risk some overstimulation and you could try to fix too many personal habits at once that you end up feeling scattered or losing your focus on what actually makes you happy. And so pick one specific area of your social life or your creative life or your style to organize perfectly early in the month and let the rest of your systems keep your momentum going. Libra Venus, your balanced values meet heavy stoic pressure, followed by a move into innovative social energy. And in early January, your values face pressure during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th. And so the positive is that the Capricorn stellium through the 19th will help you develop personal integrity by standing your ground rather than just trying to please everybody. And you find worth in being responsible at this time. But the negative is that the heavy workload and focus on results can make you feel like you've lost your sense of joy or charm. And when your ruler of Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, you'll find a shift towards social innovation and freedom. However, during the Venus-Pluto conjunction on the 19th, you do risk becoming too unpredictable or acting with a lack of tact, which could disrupt the very social balance that you are trying to maintain. And so prioritize results and practical integrity in your personal life early in the month so that you can interact with others from a place of strength, especially as we go later in the month. Scorpio Venus, your powerful and investigative values are channeled into strategic frameworks this month. During the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, the positive is that your feelings are incredibly focused and you find drive in building a legacy of trust and loyalty with a steady hand. But the negative is that through the 19th, you could become obsessed with controlling the details of your relationships or your passion projects, which could cause high internal tension. And as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, followed by its meeting with Pluto on the 19th, you gain a powerful surge of honesty that helps you modernize your habits. However, your drive for change can become volatile, and you risk an aggressive approach to social shifts that could alienate the people you value if you act too quickly or without enough empathy from their perspective. But the same could happen with your projects. You could burn out when it comes to your passion projects if you don't control that energy properly. And so channel your intense passions into one specific practical goal with a partner or with your passion projects to avoid getting caught in unnecessary power struggles. Sagittarius Venus, your expansive values are funneled into discipline, logistics, and reality checks. As the month starts, your feelings of love or passion are funneled into a serious mindset. And so the positive is that the Capricorn stellium through the 19th helps you turn your big ideas about adventure into real tangible steps. And you could find meaning in building a solid foundation for your dreams. But the negative is that on the 14th, you could feel internally restricted or bored by the demand for rules, which could drain your usual optimism. And as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, could gain an innovative approach or a visionary approach to your social life or your passion projects. However, during the Venus-Pluto meeting on the 19th, you risk acting on a sudden whim without checking if your heart's desire is actually sustainable, which could lead to a loss of emotional focus. And so handle the boring logistical details of your personal commitments, your passion projects early on so that your big plans actually have the foundation that they need to succeed later on. Capricorn Venus, the triple conjunction in your sign from the 6th to the 9th activates your peak determination, and the positive is that you have the grit to build a lasting foundation for your personal life, your commitments, your passions, and you find meaning in hard work and dedication. But the negative is that between the 11th and 13th, you could face a test that challenges your confidence in your own worth, and you also risk burnout from taking on too much emotional responsibility. And as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, you could find smarter, innovative ways to manage your social life, your passions. However, during the Venus-Pluto meeting on the 19th, you could risk a loss of structure or wanting to throw away your old rules a little bit too quickly, which could potentially create chaos in your established connections or your passion projects or with your own values. And so use your self-discipline to set the rules for your personal life early in the month, but don't forget to take care of your own emotional needs at the same time. Aquarius Venus, the first half of the month during the Capricorn stellium through the 19th is a period of quiet preparation, and the positive side is that this allows you to get your personal logistics, your creative projects, and your social schedule sorted. But the negative is that you might feel stifled or invisible early on as the environment demands a methodical routine. And then once Venus enters your sign on the 17th, you gain a surge of energy to redesign your lifestyle, your relationships, and value systems. The positive is a clear your realization of your own power to change your life. But the negative is that during the Venus-Pluto meeting on the 19th, you could risk making sudden, reckless decisions just to prove your independence, which could create a temporary chaos in your social life or creative output if you don't have a solid plan. And so finish all of your personal preparation in the first 2 weeks so that you can execute your big social plans or your passion projects with total authority later in the month. Pisces Venus during the Capricorn stellium through the 19th, the positive is that you can turn your creative passions into tangible results, especially during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th. And you find meaning in being reliable and grounded in love or art or within your core values at the very least. But the negative is that mid-month you could feel drained by the cold demand of your tasks, causing you to lose your creative spark or to feel disconnected from your loved ones due to the overwhelm of your daily life. And as Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th, your feelings become more detached, and while this helps you see things objectively, the Venus-Pluto meeting on the 19th could be a little bit jarring because you risk acting out of exhaustion or confusion if you don't pace yourself and set clear practical boundaries for your energy. And so use a set daily schedule early in the month to ensure that your energy stays focused on your own goals and your passions rather than on everybody else's problems, so that you can make the most out of your creativity, your passion projects, and your love life as we close out the end of the month. Aries Mars on January 2nd, as your ruler of Mars receives a boost from Chiron going direct, you gain the practical confidence to start new tasks. During the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, followed by the continued Capricorn stellium through the 19th, your energy will be funneled into serious disciplined work. But the positive of this is that you could gain this quality of grit, and you could have the stamina to finish long-term projects that usually bore you. But the negative is that between the 11th and 13th, you could feel irritable and stuck as the environment demands slow, methodical progress. And then once Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd and meets with Pluto on the 27th, the positive is an intense drive to innovate, but the negative is a risk of being overly aggressive or acting with a lack of tact, potentially disrupting the stability that you built earlier in the month. And so focus on being the person who handles the difficult logistics early so that you have the freedom to try new ideas by the end of the month. Taurus Mars, the month starts with a supportive period for your energy levels during the triple conjunction of Capricorn planets from the 6th to the 9th. And the positive of this is that the Capricorn stellium will provide a results-oriented framework that makes your hard work feel productive and sustainable. But the negative is that on the 9th and 10th of January, your drive will face a little bit of friction, making you feel internally torn between work duties and maybe your need to rest. And then when Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd, followed by its meeting with Pluto on the 27th, the positive is learning how to use new, more efficient tools to get things done. But the negative of this transit is that this faster pace could make you feel internally scattered or a little bit stressed. And so you risk sticking to a stubborn habit, even if it's no longer useful. And so use your natural reliability to fix old routines early in the month, but stay open to new technical updates by the final week of January. Gemini Mars, as Mercury enters Capricorn on the 1st, your drive is funneled into a serious mindset, and the positive is that throughout the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, you could gain intense focus on the mechanics of your work. The Mercury-Mars conjunction on the 17th and 18th will be a peak for your productivity, but the negative is that especially during the middle of the month, you could feel bored or restricted by the demand for rules and work, really leading you to become a little bit cynical. But when Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd, your vitality will receive a boost. And the positive is an innovative approach to your goals could be fueled, but the negative is that when Mars meets Pluto on the 27th, you risk being a little bit too detached or focusing so much on the logic of a situation that you forget the practical needs of the people that you need to work with or the things that you need to do, or you could forget about the needs of yourself. And so focus your brain on one specific complex project early on to ensure that your efforts lead to a final tangible result later in the month. Cancer Mars, early January provides a grounded framework for your energy levels during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th. The positive is that you gain the grit to turn your desires into a tangible reality through stoic discipline, but the negative is that on the 9th and 10th, you risk overextending yourself and biting off more than you can chew because your drive could be at odds with the demand for results. And then when Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd, the positive is a more objective way of managing your energy, but the negative is that as Mars meets Pluto on the 27th, you could feel a little bit disconnected or aimless, and so you are being pushed to change your old defensive habits, which can be jarring if you aren't ready to let go of your usual way of protecting your peace. And so you can build a practical daily schedule early in the month to ensure your time and energy are protected from unnecessary stress as we go to the end of the month. Leo Mars, during the heavy environment of the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, you find purpose in mastering your duties, and the positive is that your energy is focused on reliability, which could build professional respect and long-term security for your energy levels. But the negative is that in the first half of the month, you could feel ignored or unappreciated for your efforts, as doing the behind-the-scenes work can feel a little bit of a blow to your desire to be out there. And when Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd, your drive will shift towards the people around you, and the positive of this is an intense drive to collaborate on big goals, but the negative is that during the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, you do risk a power struggle or an urge to act a little bit too independently. And you could cause unnecessary conflict with those around you or even yourself if you try to force a personal vision onto others that doesn't really consider the environment and the changes that are happening around you. And so this is the time to really let your hard work and practical results do the talking early in the month so that you have the authority to lead later in the month. Virgo Mars, through the Capricorn stellium until the 19th, the transits will favor your energy levels, and the positive is that you can find meaning in high efficiency and seeing tangible progress in your life, especially during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th. The Mercury-Mars conjunction as well on the 17th and 18th is a moment of unparalleled stamina, but the negative is that you risk becoming a little bit too critical of your own efforts or even the efforts of others, which can slow down your progress. And then as Mars enters Aquarius on the 20th, the positive is finding innovative shortcuts to really manage your workload and the things that you're building towards. But the negative is that Mars meets Pluto on the 27th. You could risk a little bit of overstimulation where you try to fix too many systems at once and end up feeling scattered or losing your focus on the final goal. And so it's a good time to really organize your life and fix broken systems, but do so early in the month so that you are prepared for bigger changes by the end of the month. Libra Mars, in early January, your energy levels face a little bit of heavy pressure during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th. And the positive of this is that you are developing personal integrity by standing your ground and producing results rather than, trying to take the easy way out. Not that that is something that you will do, but you will definitely feel the grit at the beginning of the month. But the negative side of that is that the heavy workload through the 19th can feel like a constant weight on your shoulders, really making you feel like you've lost your sense of joy in the name of duty. And between the 11th and 13th, you may feel a loss of confidence in your ability to lead. But when Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd, the positive is a shift towards social action. You maybe become more innovative. Your energy levels will improve again. But the negative is that during the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, you do risk becoming a little bit unpredictable, or you could act with a lack of tact, which could disrupt the very balance that you're trying to build. And so it's a good time to prioritize results and practical progress early in the month, especially to ensure that you are able to stay on track with the, all over the place energy that could take place by the end of the month. Scorpio Mars, during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, the positive of this is that your energy will be incredibly focused and strategic, and you can find drive in building so much good in your life with a steady hand. But the negative is that early in the month, you could become a little bit obsessed with control and whatever it is that you're trying to go after, which can cause a high sense of internal tension. And as Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd, your growth becomes a little bit volatile. But the positive of this is that you have a powerful surge of energy to really modernize your life and your habits. But the negative is that during the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, you do risk a little bit of an aggressive approach or an urge to dominate others through your actions or to dominate your life through your actions, and you may feel a little bit crazy if you can't control everything. And while this is an unstoppable drive for progress, you must be careful to not act too quickly or without considering other people or other factors within your decisions. And so you can really channel your intense drive into one specific practical goal to avoid getting caught in the unnecessary power struggles throughout the month. Sagittarius Mars, as the month starts, your drive is funneled into a very serious mindset. And so the positive of this is that the Capricorn stellium really helps you to turn your visions into real tangible steps. And you can find so much drive in the how of your goals. But the negative is that on the 9th and 10th, you could feel a little bit internally restricted or bored by the demand for rules, which can drain your optimism and make your duties feel a little bit like a cage. And as Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd, the positive is a shot of adrenaline, and you have such a great ability for problem solving around this time. If there's any problems you're trying to debunk, do it around this time. And then on the 26th, as Neptune re-enters Aries, your drive will become more instinctual, and you might feel that you're able to more act towards your dreams at this time. But the negative is that during the Mars-Pluto conjunction on the 27th, you do risk acting on an impulsive whim without checking if your plan is actually sustainable, which could lead to a result that isn't exactly what you want. And so this is a good time to really handle the boring logistical details of your life, especially early in the month, so that your goals actually have a solid place to stand later in the month. Capricorn Mars, this is a major month for you because the first half of the month has a stellium in the sign of your Mars, and so the triple conjunction in your sign from the 6th to the 9th will activate your peak drive. And the positive of this is that you are at your most determined, and you will have the grit to build a lasting foundation for the entire year at this time, and you can find so much drive and self-mastery and hard work. But the negative is that between the 11th and 13th, you may face a challenge that really tests or challenges your confidence, forcing you to move forward even if you feel unready. And you also risk burnout if you take on too much. And then as Mars enters Aquarius on the 23rd, the positive is you could find smarter, innovative ways to really run your life. But the negative is that during the Mars-Pluto meeting on the 27th, you could risk a loss of structure or wanting to throw away the things that you've built too quickly whenever you get a new idea. And this could potentially create chaos within your daily schedule or what you're trying to achieve, which could really drive down your energy levels. And so it's a good time to use your self-discipline to set the rules for the whole year early in the month, but don't forget to take care of your physical needs, especially as we get to the end of the month. Aquarius Mars, the first half of the month during the Capricorn stellium through the 19th, this is a period of quiet preparation. And so the positive is that this allows you to get everything sorted and ready for when your energy peaks. This is a time to, kind of rest and relax and make sure that your energy levels are taken care of first and foremost, because it could feel a little bit draining. Because the negative is that you could feel a little bit stifled, especially early on in the month, as your environment will demand for methodical routines. But this could feel like a cage for somebody who really wants to go after what it is that they want whenever they want. And then once Mars enters your sign on the 23rd, you're going to have this immense drive to really redesign your life and your habits. But the negative is that during the Mars-Pluto meeting on the 27th, you could risk making sudden, reckless decisions just to prove your own independence. Or this could just be a very impulsive decision you make just because you don't know how to direct your energy, which could create temporary chaos in your social life or your professional life if you don't have a final solid plan. And so this really is a good month to finish all your preparation in the first 2 weeks so that you can really execute your big plans and have the energy to do so with total authority later in the month. Pisces Mars, during the Capricorn stellium through the 19th, the positive is that you could really turn your creative passions into tangible results, especially during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th. And you could find a lot of drive in being reliable and grounded at this time. But the negative is that on the 9th and 10th, you could feel drained by cold logistics, really causing you to lose your spark or feel overwhelmed by your daily life. And as Neptune re-enters Aries on the 26th, your energy levels could start to go up because Neptune is no longer in your sign. And so you could take bold individual action on your goals more easily at this time. But the negative is that as Mars meets Pluto on the 27th, you risk acting out of exhaustion or confusion if you don't pace yourself or set clear practical boundaries for your energy, and you are being pushed to move past a passive approach and more towards taking charge of your own well-being. And so you can really use a set daily schedule early in the month to ensure that your energy stays focused on your own goals rather than on everybody else's problems, so that by the end of the month, everything that you have built is yours and you don't feel burnt out in the process. Jupiter in Aries with the heavy Capricorn stellium dominating the first half of the month, your natural Jupiterian mechanic, which learns best through bold, independent, and immediate action, will face a little bit of friction because you're being asked to mature your philosophy of act first and think later into something more sustainable. The positive of this month is that the direct motion of Chiron in Aries on the 2nd, combined with the structural support of Capricorn, offers a rare opportunity to turn your leaps of faith into concrete roadmaps. You will find that your confidence is actually boosted by having a plan rather than diminished by it, and you are learning that your discipline is not the enemy of freedom but the vehicle for it. But the negative side of the month is that during the triple conjunction from the 6th to the 9th, you could feel an intense philosophical frustration, and your urge to expand is being met with a stop and check energy. The danger here is that you could interpret a necessary delay as a personal failure or a sign that your instincts are wrong, and you risk becoming reckless or aggressive in your search for meaning, really trying to force growth in an environment that is demanding patience. And so your lesson of the month is to integrate strategy into your instinct and to trust that slowing down to build a foundation doesn't mean you have lost your fire. It just means that you are building a fireplace to keep it burning much longer. Natal Jupiter in Taurus. Your natal Jupiter expands through stability, resource accumulation, and tangible proof of value. And so the Capricorn energy this month is harmonious with your nature, really validating your belief that slow and steady is the only way to build lasting wisdom. The positive side of the month is that this Capricorn stellium will act as a stabilizing anchor for your worldview, and you will likely find deep meaning and purpose in the practical application of your values. It is a fantastic time for learning about financial longevity, for example, maybe resource management or mastering physical craft, and you feel right within yourself because the world is currently rewarding the very patience you naturally possess. But the negative side of this month is that the challenges could arise when the Sun and Mercury shift into Aquarius from the 19th to the 20th, so your philosophy can become overly rigid or materialistic, and you risk rejecting a new innovative idea simply because it cannot physically be touched or proven immediately. And during the Venus-Pluto activation later in the month as well, you may conflate your self-worth with your net worth or what you've achieved at least. Or you could simply refuse to unlearn an outdated method because you are stubborn about maintaining your comfort zone. And so really lean into productivity for the first 2 weeks, but when the energy shifts into Aquarius, really challenge yourself to learn one new thing that has no practical use but expands your mind, and do not let your need for security stop you from evolving. Jupiter in Gemini, your path to growth is intellectual, social, and driven by curiosity, and you find meaning in the connection of disparate ideas. So the heavy earth energy of January forces your scattered curiosity into a funnel of serious application. And so the positive of the month is that usually Jupiter in Gemini wants to learn a little bit about everything. And so this month, the Capricorn influence will teach you the power of mastery. And you are able to take your diverse interests and structure them into coherent theses or a project. And your ability to communicate complex ideas will be more grounded, making you an effective teacher or a student. And then the Mercury-Jupiter opposition on the 14th is a peak moment for debating ideas and refining your logic against opposition. But the challenges of this month is mental containment because you could feel bored, cynical, or restricted by the demand for useful knowledge over interesting knowledge. And if you cannot see the immediate utility of a subject, you might check out completely. And then during the Sun-Mercury-Pluto alignment later in the month, you really risk intellectualizing your emotions, using logic to bypass how you actually feel about your growth, which could lead to a disconnected and cold worldview. And so really view this month as a masterclass in focus because your lesson is to realize that depth does not kill variety. It gives you a curiosity with a purpose. So focus on the why you are learning, not just the what. Jupiter in Cancer, your Jupiter functions through emotional intelligence, intuition, and the wisdom of protection. And you grow when you feel safe and when you can nurture others or yourself or your interests. And January presents a stern structural energy that could challenge you to harden your shell without closing your heart. And so the positive of the month is that the Capricorn stellium opposing your Jupiter placement, at least by sign, will teach you about boundaries as a form of love. And you are learning that true generosity really requires an outlet, and you will find meaning this month in establishing traditions or securing yourself or your internal sense of safety, or learning about maybe your roots or the things that ground you in life with such focus. And then the full moon on the 3rd will specifically illuminate where your emotional wisdom can guide your practical decisions. But the tough part of the month can lie between the cold demands of the world and your need for emotional connection, because you could feel that the world is too harsh for your philosophy of kindness, leading you to retreat a little bit. And the risk is that if you act out of defensiveness, you could use your intuition to justify isolating yourself rather than expanding. And so you might cling to the past or nostalgia as a way to avoid the necessary modernization of the cold habits demanded by the Pluto transits. And so your growth opportunity this month is to really build a structure that protects your sensitivity, and do not harden your heart, but instead strengthen your backbone and use this time to professionalize your intuition. Jupiter and Leo, you find meaning through creative self-expression, leadership, and being seen. And your Jupiter expands when you have an audience or a canvas. And the Capricorn energy of January demands that you prove that you have the discipline to back up your charisma. And so this is a month of professional creativity. This is the positive of this month. And you are learning that talent is nothing without the work ethic to support it. And the positive manifestation of the transits are a deep sense of purpose found in mastering your craft behind the scenes. And you are really refining your leadership style to be more authoritative and less performative. And when the Sun enters Aquarius, opposing your Jupiter at least by sign, you could gain a valuable objective perspective on how your personal light fits into the collective picture. But the negative side of the month is that the ego can be a trap, and you could feel underappreciated or dim if the work that you are doing doesn't receive immediate payouts from it. And the danger is that you lose faith in your talents because the external validation could be a little bit quiet. And also during the Mars-Pluto conjunction, which does oppose your Jupiter by sign, you do risk becoming a little bit dogmatic, maybe domineering, or trying to force others to see your truth because you feel insecure about your standing. And so trust the process this month of the work itself that you're doing. And your lesson is to find joy in the act of creation, not the reaction to it. And if you can validate yourself this month, your confidence will become unshakable. Jupiter and Virgo, your Jupiter expands through analysis, service, and the refinement of details, and you find purpose in the grain of sand, if that makes sense. And so the Capricorn stellium is a massive support to your mechanic, as the earth energy will harmonize with your need for practical application. The positives of the month is that you will feel a strong sense of flow in your learning processes all throughout the month, and you are able to see exactly how your skills can contribute to the bigger picture of your life. So it is an excellent time for specialized training, maybe organizing systems, or learning about health and routine, whatever resonates with you and your Jupiter placement. And your wisdom is sought after because it is useful, and you are learning that your ability to critique and improve is a high form of high-level growth, not just nitpicking. And so the negative of this month, though, is that the shadow of these transits are analysis paralysis, and because the energy supports detail so strongly, you do risk becoming stuck in the weeds and losing the Jupiterian vision. And you might become hypercritical of yourself or others, really refusing to expand until conditions are perfect, which they never are. And then later in the month, the Aquarius energy could overstimulate your nervous system, which could make you feel scattered as you try to fix everything at once. And so remember that perfect is the enemy of good, and your growth this month comes from applying what you know, even if the conditions aren't flawless, and trust that your systems are strong enough to hold the expansion that you're aiming for. Jupiter and Libra, your Jupiter expands through relationship, balance, and the synthesis of opposing views, and you find truth in the middle ground. And so the heavy Capricorn influence will really challenge your philosophy by demanding hard choices rather than diplomatic ones. And so the positive of this month is that you are learning the difference between making peace and creating justice. And so the Capricorn energy teaches you that true relationship growth really requires difficult conversations, contracts, and defined responsibilities. Same with balancing whatever it is that you're going after in life. And you will find the meaning in formalizing partnerships or learning about the legalities and structures that hold society together, or the systems in your life together. And the shift into Aquarius later in the month will open your mind to new progressive concepts that could expand your definition of fairness. So this is a great time, especially at the end of the month. But the negative of the month is that there is a danger of crisis or indecision or superficiality. And so you may feel the weight of the duty, crushing your desires for grace, and you really risk agreeing to things that you don't believe in just to maintain a facade for harmony. Especially during the Mars-Pluto conjunction, your belief in fairness may be tested by a situation that seems fundamentally unjust, really leading to a cynical mindset or a withdrawal from social engagement. And so stop trying to make everybody happy this month, because your lesson is to find the truth that exists even when other people disagree. And growth this month will come from standing firm in your own values, not just mirroring others. Jupiter in Scorpio, your Jupiter expands through transformation, psychological depth, and uncovering hidden truths, and you find meaning in the shadows. And so the Capricorn energy will really provide an outlet for your intensity, while Pluto, which is your modern ruler, will make strong aspects in the Aquarius stelliums, activating at the end of the month, which will kind of activate your need for deep research. And this is the perfect time to gain sudden insights. And so the positives of this month is that you are in the prime position to convert your intuition into power, because the Capricorn stellium this month will help you take your psychological insights and apply them to the real world, perhaps through financial planning, maybe research, or even deep emotional work. And so you are learning that true power comes from self-mastery, not just intensity, but also the Aquarius stellium could help you to detach slightly, really allowing you to view your own psyche with a scientific objective lens, which could heal the obsession that could take over when you are in deep, investigation. But the negatives or the risks of this month is that there is a risk of paranoia or a power complex, because with Jupiter expanding your scorpionic nature and with Pluto being activated a lot this month, you might mistake suspicion for wisdom, because you risk becoming obsessed with knowing the truth to the point of destroying, maybe trust in your relationships, or even trust with yourself and your ability to, have the answers and stay in control in life. And you could resist necessary changes because you are holding on to a grudge or a past betrayal as a foundational belief system, even if you don't know you're doing that. And so use your focus to heal, not to investigate. And your growth opportunity is to learn how to let go of suspicion once you realize it doesn't serve your evolution, because depth is a gift, so don't let it become your prison. Jupiter in Sagittarius. Jupiter loves being in Sagittarius, but the transits that are happening are going to focus on different energies this month, because your mechanic is pure expansion, optimism, and the quest for the big picture. But the Capricorn system is a reality check for your belief systems. The positives of this month is that you are learning to operationalize your dreams almost. And so Capricorn teaches you that having a vision isn't enough, because you need a budget or a schedule. And this is a month where your philosophy will meet the pavement, and you will find great meaning in seeing long-term goals finally take physical shape. And the Aquarius energy later in the month will reinvigorate your hope and connect you to networks or ideas that could really push you forward in life. But the risk of this month is that you could feel clipped wings, because the heavy focus on rules, regulations, or reality could feel a little bit suffocating to your spirit, especially in the first half of the month. And you risk a crisis of faith where you feel like your magic has gone out of the world because everything feels so administrative. And the dangers that you become reckless, maybe ignoring the details in a desperate bid to feel free, which can lead to sloppy mistakes or missed opportunities. And so do not view the mundane details as a trap. Instead, view them as the start of something great, because your lesson is that true freedom is really built on a foundation of discipline, and do the work now so that you can fly higher later in the month. Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter's in fall here, meaning your natural way of expanding could be a little bit through restriction, ambition, and hierarchy. However, the transits this month, including a stellium in your sign, are triggering a specific brand of wisdom, and you can be greatly in your element, and this is the perfect month for you to grow. And so the positive of this month is that you are learning that you are right all along about something, and maybe some hard work will pay off for you. And so you could find immense purpose in taking on responsibility and guiding others up the mountain, or yourself up the mountain. Maybe you actually reach the top, and your capacity for growth this time is maybe linked to how you approach ambition and what you achieve. And so this month will offer a masterclass in leadership in whatever it is that you're doing, even if it's yourself that you're trying to lead. And you are expanding your influence by proving your reliability. And if there's any time to really test if your beliefs really stand the test of time, this will be the month to do it. And the boring parts of life are where you can find your biggest growth this month. But the negative is that there is a danger of over-identification with what you achieve, and you risk believing that you are your achievements in some way. And so if a goal is delayed, for example, your entire belief system about your self-worth could crumble a little bit. And you may also become overly pessimistic or authoritarian, really refusing to listen to Aquarian innovation because it threatens the traditional structures you have worked so hard to build. And so ambition is a healthy fuel, but don't let it burn you out. And your growth this month will lie in realizing that you are the creator of your own life. And make sure the ladder that you are climbing, no matter where you're trying to get, is leaning against the right wall. Jupiter in Aquarius, you expand through innovation, social reform, and breaking established norms, and you find meaning in the future and the collective. And so the Capricorn stellium will represent the old guard that you are trying to evolve past, while the shift of planets into Aquarius will mark your awakening. And so the positive is that in the first half of the month, this can be a lesson in understanding the systems that run your life so you can hack them later. And you are learning the rules of the game, and not just to follow them, but to improve them. And as the Sun and Mercury enter Aquarius, your worldview will undergo massive upgrades. You could receive sudden flashes of insights, maybe downloads that connect the dots in ways that nobody else can see. And your wisdom could come from detachment and objectivity. But the risk of this month is that you could become an intellectual rebel without a cause. And maybe you could reject traditions simply because they work or you think they work. And you could throw away valuable wisdom in your pursuit of the new. And the danger is also maybe this God complex, not like in an egotistical kind of way, but maybe you just believe that your logic is superior to others in some way, or that it's superior to their lived experiences. Or you could just feel alienated or misunderstood, leading to detachment that borders on disassociation from the human element of growth. And so innovation really requires a baseline to deviate from. So respect the past as the data set that you need to build the future. That is how you should approach January. And the lesson is to bring the people along with your vision, not just to leave them behind. Jupiter in Pisces, your Jupiter is in its traditional home, really expanding you through empathy, spirituality, and the dissolution of boundaries. And you really learn through, absorbing the environment around you. And that heavy Capricorn energy will provide a necessary sort of foundation for your flowing river. And so the positive of this month is you are learning to manifest the mystical. Capricorn teaches you how to take your abstract beliefs and apply them to daily life. You can find meaning in the practical magic, using your intuition to make better business or life decisions. And the full moon in Cancer this month will harmonize beautifully with your placement, really validating your emotional intelligence. And you are expanding your capacity to heal others this month by setting better boundaries for yourself. But the risk of the month is that the harshness of the real world can feel a little bit overwhelming. And you could feel that your kindness is being exploited or that your worldview is being mocked almost by a cynical environment. And the risk is also escapism, maybe using fantasy or avoidance to check out of the heavy earth energy. Maybe there could be times where you feel more like a victim and you feel powerless against the structures of your life rather than realizing that you have the power to flow around them. And so remember that you are the water and Capricorn is the cup. And without the cup, you can spill everywhere. So accept the structure of this month as a way to hold your power, not as something that limits it. And that is how you can make the most of this energy. Saturn in Aries, the mechanic of your placement is disciplined initiative, and so you may face a struggle between your urge to act and the fear of the consequences, and your pressure point is the right to exist as an individual. This January, as Chiron goes direct in Aries and Neptune finally enters your sign, the construction you feel is around your ability to lead. You may feel a bruised ego or a fear that you aren't strong enough to handle the new responsibilities coming your way, and so to properly channel this, you must realize that discipline for you is not about stopping your fire, but about creating a fireplace almost to burn in. And growth really comes from acting despite the fear of failure. And so this month, you can prove that your strength is through consistent and brave starts. With natal Saturn in Taurus, your mechanic is structured security, and so your limiting pressure often manifests as a fear of lack or a rigid attachment to stability in some way. And so this January, the Capricorn stellium supports your need for order, but the Aquarius transits will challenge your stubborn habits, and you might feel a constricting pressure to modernize your resources or your security or your self-esteem in some way. And so to properly channel this energy, you must move beyond the hoarding of safety and start building systems that are useful and practical and tangible in the real world. And discipline this month for you is found in the methodical redesign of your values so you can ensure that what you own doesn't end up owning you and that you can rule and take control of your life. Natal Saturn and Gemini. The mechanic of Saturn and Gemini is disciplined communication. It's a disciplined mind, and the constricting pressure is often a fear of not being smart enough or being misunderstood. And so this January, with Mercury in Capricorn and Aquarius, your mental patterns will be under review. And so maybe you'll feel like this tunnel vision or a pressure to speak with absolute authority. And so to properly channel this energy, you must see your cleverness and your mind and your ability to solve real world problems as something that actually has the ability to make a difference in your life. It's not that you're just collecting data. It is now time to put it into practice. And discipline this month for you is really found in narrowing your focus. And you can prove that your intelligence is there and that it's valid by mastering one complex system and trying at least one action to make a difference in your life using your mind power, rather than just scattering your insights across things that don't make a difference. Natal Saturn in Cancer, you may feel the weight of emotional responsibility, and your limiting pressure is often the fear of vulnerability, or maybe you feel like you have to cage off your heart in some way. Maybe you have the heavy duty of being a caretaker. And so this January, with Jupiter still in your sign, but being opposed by that Capricorn stellium, you could feel this tug of war between your duty to, take responsibility and to, care for people and to build something. And it might pull you away from your heart in some way. And so the pressure is on your internal temperament, and it's asking if you can be an authority without hardening your heart. You have to let both exist. And so to properly channel this, you must build structures that protect your softness rather than hiding it. And discipline this month is found in setting firm, respectful boundaries that allow you to nurture without being depleted. And so if you can find that this month, you are gold. Saturn in Leo, the mechanic of this placement is structured self-expression, so your constricting pressure is often a fear of being seen or a rigid need for validation. So this January, the Aquarius transits happening in your opposite sign, especially towards the end of the month, will put a high voltage pressure on the balance of your responsibility versus the pressures of the outside world. And so you could feel an ego clash or a fear that your unique spark is being swallowed by the collective or swallowed by what's going on in the world. And so to properly channel your energy, it is time to be the person that you would look up to. It is time to be the person who leads with virtue. And so whenever you have any hardships, you can lead by example, even if it's just you watching. And this is the best way to growth, because if you're doing things for approval, you will not get the results you need. But by being the person that you look up to, you can create the structures to really get you super far this month. With the natal Saturn in Virgo, your mechanic is meticulous application. So your limiting pressure is often with perfectionism or such a paralyzing focus on the small stuff in life. And so early January's Capricorn energy will support your need for order. But the Mercury squares to Chiron especially could trigger a fear of incompetence with you. And you may feel a constricting pressure to be perfect in your daily routine or to be perfect with how you execute things. And so to properly channel this, you must use your analysis to really create useful systems in your life rather than just finding faults. And so discipline this month is really found in the thoughtful application of your skills to solve systematic issues and to prove your capability through consistent practical results. And so no matter what you do, especially as planets move to Aquarius and make the ground that you're standing on a little bit unstable, really focus on the results, because this is the best way you can ground yourself this month. With the natal Saturn in Libra, the mechanic of Saturn is principled partnership, or it's principled balance. And so your constricting pressure is often a fear of rejection or an overly rigid adherence to social fairness. And so this January, the Capricorn squares to your Libra Saturn, at least by sign, will force you to deal with the hard rules of how you relate versus how you assert yourself. And so you may feel a temporary feeling of restriction or a cooling down of the emotional atmosphere within your life. And so to properly channel this energy, you must move from people pleasing or worrying about the balance to doing things the right way, because this month discipline is found in building equitable structures that are based on shared responsibility. And you are really learning that true balance requires the courage to be an authority in your own life. For natal Saturn and Scorpio, the mechanic here is discipline transformation. And so your limiting pressure often surrounds a fear of betrayal or a rigid control over your own intensity. And so this January, the Pluto activations in Aquarius, especially later in the month, will create a high voltage pressure on your unseen world. And so you may feel a deep investigative urge to tear down old patterns, but the weight of the past will feel heavy at this time. And so to properly channel this energy this month, you must really embrace the scorched earth as a tool for progress, and discipline is found this month in the quiet stoic work of psychological alchemy, and you can really turn your shadows into a powerful foundation for the future if you learn how to use this energy properly. Natal Saturn and Sagittarius, the mechanic of Saturn here is disciplined wisdom, and so your limiting pressure is often a fear of being trapped or a rigid attachment to a specific belief system or an inability to really feel free in your own life. And so this January, the move from Capricorn into Aquarius, especially later in the month, will challenge your philosophical outlook, but it's a perfect opportunity to alchemize how you approach belief and expansion in your life. And so you could feel a constricting pressure to ground your big ideas into a realistic schedule. And so to properly channel this energy, you must find meaning in the mechanics of truth, and discipline this month is found in the pursuit of higher learning that is actually useful to your life or society, really proving your optimism through the long-term work of reforming what it is that you want out of life. Natal Saturn and Capricorn. So Saturn's mechanic is pure self-mastery here. And so your limiting pressure is the weight of, building something great and really channeling your determination properly. And it's the feeling that you must carry the entire structure alone. And so this January, with the stellium in your sign, the pressure for results will feel immense. And you might feel all work and no play at some points, which could really lead to burnout. And so to properly channel the energy this month, you must realize that your discipline is found in handing off the bricks. And growth really comes from allowing your rigid structures to evolve into more innovative collaborative systems. And you are learning this month to lead with integrity while leaving room for a visionary future. Natal Saturn in Aquarius, the mechanic of your placement is systematic innovation. And so your limiting pressure is often a fear of being an outsider or a rigid adherence to logic over emotion. Like you feel like you need to make an impact either on the world or with your own life. And so this January, the Pluto conjunctions in your sign will create a massive power up of your responsibilities. And so you could feel a jolt to your identity, really forcing you to use your detached point of view to redesign the systems around you. And this drive will feel especially strong by the end of the month. And so to channel this properly, you have to avoid a God complex, because discipline this month is found in using your technical knowledge and unique insights to serve the collective or to serve your own life in a truly innovative way, proving your power through whatever action it is that you take. Natal Saturn in Pisces, the mechanic of your placement is structured spirituality, structured compassion, creativity, empathy. And so your limiting pressure is often a fear of dissolving or lacking boundaries in your empathetic world. And as Saturn transits the final degrees of your sign this January, you are feeling that final exam energy of your discipline. And you may feel a fog of war or a weight of responsibility where you must let go of what no longer serves you. And so to properly channel the energy this month, this is really the time to put your foot down and go after what it is that you want. And this is the time where the delay will end. And you need to learn to say no to the distractions of the world to focus on your gifts. And discipline this month is found in creating a solid form for your imagination, really proving your courage as a spiritual warrior who dreams a new world into existence.